welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. As we do every hour with introductions, he's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright, and good morning.
Man, what a few weeks to be a Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Basketball team on a hot streak, win a Super Bowl, and go ahead and peel another national championship, does Jay Wright.
Get in the playoffs.
Man.
But is anyone smoother about it than Jay Wright?
No.
He just walks the walk. He's having a good time. Life is good.
He was pretty good. Everything except that tie bar on the suit thing.
I knew
you had such a hard time with that.
Can I ask you a personal question?
I'm afraid, but okay.
Do you have just the slightest crush on Jay Wright?
Oh,
Just
there's no doubt.
Okay.
It's there.
It's more than the slightest.
Yeah. I have a crush on two people, Danny Ainge and Jay Wright. I've been very open about that.
One of those totally understandable. The other one, man.
Okay. Well, let's not say which one is which. Let's just get into it. I love Jay. He was always great with me when I was in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. So. He's been great to the show. Friend
All
of the
right.
show.
Speaking of the big marquee game last night, so 2 months ago, the aforementioned Jay Wright came on this show. He laughed. He smiled. He talked about the joy of college basketball. And I thought to myself, no way this guy's going to win another title. He's too nice. Well, Jay Wright won a title last night, another one. Villanova capping off their dominant tournament performance with a 79-62 win over Michigan, led by 31 points out of the guy of the night, Dante DiVincenzo, off the bench. Wildcats win their second national title in 3 years, beating Michigan. All right, let's start the conversation with you, Chris Carter. How are the Wildcats able to be so dominant, not only the entire season, but then, of course, in the biggest game of the tournament?
Well, for people who didn't watch the regular season that close, they might not understand why Villanova was there. 14 of the weeks during the season, they were the number one ranked team. But they had a couple injuries during the season that it only made the team stronger once they got into the tournament. So not only are they one of the best teams, we know with Coach Wright, they're one of the best coach teams, but with these injuries during the season, it allowed them to put minutes on other players that ultimately would be the key to them winning the third title in school history. Their ability to understand what they were doing offensively, because they are a three-point shooting team, and even when the three-point shots weren't going, they stuck with their system. They start going to more isolation, taking guys off the dribble, which we hadn't seen them do a whole bunch, not the whole lineup. But Jay Wright, they were able to change the game plan during the game when they weren't hitting the three-point shots, go to more isolation to get the offense going. And then ultimately, I mean, this is the best team in college basketball because of their overall depth. We saw they have the super sub, Dante, come off the bench.
Man.
And when you have that type of productivity, they're going to be hard to beat in college basketball. Also, it's refreshing. They have a star freshman. They have a star sophomore, star junior. And we know their senior class, like they've been winners since they've been there. So this is the combination that I believe is lethal in college basketball and supersedes the one-and-dones with all the attention on all the freshmen. A program like Villanova that has those stars at every level. And, I mean, this is not going to stop. When you can build a program like Jay's done, you can be competitive every year.
And I want to talk about the program and what this means for Nova historically in a moment. We alluded to yesterday what rarefied air they would go into with a third championship, what rarefied air Jay Wright as a coach would go into with a second championship. Before we do that, you mentioned the star sub, Dante DiVincenzo. Like, this guy is a sub in name only, right? He comes off the bench, but he was their fourth leading scorer during the year. He plays starters minutes. And what we saw from him in the first half reminded me of Jerry McNamara at Syracuse, Carmelo's year, 18 points in the first half, 6 3-pointers against Kansas. What now Syracuse ended up winning that title, but Jerry McNamara got then shut down in the second half. DiVincenzo won them this basketball game, in my eyes, with his 9 consecutive points in the second half.
Also, to start the second half, he didn't start, but 52 seconds into it.
He was back in there.
I mean, Jay put him right
in. And that was a great call by Jay.
Jay Wright wasn't going to totally adjust, wasn't going to change what they'd been doing all year long. They got to the national championship starting these 5, starting the second half with these 5, the same as their game starters, but he knew who his hot hand was. This was a game that was playing exactly the way Michigan wanted it to. With 5.5, 6 minutes left in the first half, Michigan's up 21-16. And then to close the first half, it was a 21-7 run by Villanova. That was part of a larger run that was 35-12. And I tweeted at halftime, it felt like the game got away from Michigan those last 5 minutes. Like, they had played so well for the first 15. To go into halftime down nearly double digits was going to be so difficult for them to overcome. And DiVincenzo was spectacular. Now, this is a team that's got two definite pros on it. DiVincenzo might be a pro. It's got a lottery pick on it, Mikal Bridges. But he was the guy last night that led them to victory. 30 points in a national championship game is a tremendous feat.
And here's what's so great about him, too, is that the other players rallied around him, right? They even said, hey, we knew he had the hot hand. We didn't need to be the star. We've been the star. It was great to see him come off the bench, and it was nice to know, like, what a great team concept they have. But this wasn't just the final game that this Nova team dominated. I mean, they covered the spread every game. They were so dominant throughout the entire tournament. How were they able to do that, CC?
Man, they're really talented. I mean, they can score the basketball. Let's not forget, during the regular season, NCAA at leading 83 points a game, and to be able to play that type of pace, that was going to be a problem for Michigan. Big Ten plays a great brand of basketball, but their inability to build score in the upper 70s or 80 points, as we can see, the numbers would indicate if it was going to be a game that was going to have that type of pace, Michigan was going to have a hard time being able to defeat Villanova. Also, Michigan forgot Mo Wagner. They forgot to throw the ball, and he had the mismatch of the game. As you can see, when they started the game, the second half or the first half, they did not go back into the paint. When they did a lot of pick and roll, and they would get the mismatch with him on a smaller player. And they forgot to go to him, keep going to him. He was getting fouls. He was getting easy shots. I believe Villanova was afraid. That was the only offensive player from Michigan that they were afraid of. So when they went away from that, that also led to Villanova getting this win.
When we went to the first commercial break, Wagner had 7 points. At the under 16, he's got 7 points. He then finishes with 16. And there were a lot of mismatches. There were a lot of times you had a small guard on him, and they were not getting him the basketball. To your point about them embracing DiVincenzo's game, he needed to have this game because Jalen Brunson, the National Player of the Year, the best player in college basketball according to all the awards this year, was in foul trouble and was not on from the field. It was Mikal Bridges and DiVincenzo that led him to the victory. To your point, though, about the dominant performance, now this is only the second team since the field has expanded to 64 teams that has won every game by at least a dozen points. Their average margin of victory was nearly 18 points. That's
outstanding.
And by the way, so for example, the team that had a better average margin of victory en route to a national championship was the Villanova team 2 years ago. And you might say, how could that be? They won a game. They won the national championship on a buzzer beater. That was a close game. Their Elite Eight game was a close game. That's because they had a couple 30 and 40-point wins mixed in there. Villanova was just beating everybody by 12 to 25 points. Like every game in this tournament, they were just so clearly the best team out there. And unlike Michigan, it's not taking anything away from Michigan, who had a fortuitous turn in the bracket. Until the national championship game, they hadn't played a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seed. Villanova played about the toughest bracket you could play. It played true to seed. They played a 3 instead of a 2, but they didn't have any Cinderellas in their path. They were beating, after the first game against Radford, some of the best teams in college basketball, and they were winning these games by halftime.
So now Villanova they've won 2 out of the last 3. What does this mean? Where do they sit big picture? Where does that fall for you?
Trying to build the program. I mean, continue. They might lose. They're going to definitely lose one guy. They could lose as many as 3 guys. If the freshman Spellman decides to go into the draft, you have to replace him. I'm not going to put them in the category as far as what do they do next. Are they for next year's? Because there's too many moving parts. There's too many freshmen coming in that we don't know about. But Jay Wright's team will be very, very good. They will be the favorite in the Big East again. When you look at Xavier, who they had problems with during the regular season, right?
Yep.
They lose their coach.
They beat Xavier twice in the regular season, but Xavier ended their streak of consecutive conference championships.
Yes. Now, Xavier, they're losing their coach, Chris Mack, to Louisville.
Yep.
So what will they do from there? But they are the preeminent team, especially on the East Coast. Like, I think they have a transfer coming over is going to help them. They can play. They got they got a top 15 freshman coming in, a 5-star recruit that's going to help them. But it really hinges on, does Brunson decide to come back for his 4th year. And does Spellman, the freshman, does he decide to go to the NBA? I think he should come back. That's where Villanova is going forward.
And DiVincenzo will come back. Like, I understand people are so, I think he might end up being an NBA player, but he will come back. He's not a leave early type of player. I'd be very surprised if Mikal Bridges go be a pro, go make money, go be a top 15 pick. There's no question about it. But as far as what this means for the program to me, you got to keep in mind who you're recruiting. Everyone you're recruiting at this point in college basketball was born in the year 2000 or later, right? That's how young these guys are. Since the year 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have won more championships in these players' lifetimes. I'm not even including, obviously, their first one in '85. From 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have a better winning history for when these players were alive to watch college basketball. Like, Villanova has won as many championships in the last 3 years as Kansas, one of the true blue bloods, has won in the last 60 years.
That's crazy.
They've won as many championships they've won more championships in the last 2 years in the last 3 years than UCLA has won in the last 30 years. Like, so the blue blood thing can kind of be fluid. And if you're a young recruit and you say, I want to play for a cool program, I want to play in a cool city, and I want to play for a program that has a winning history.
And a good coach.
And a great coach.
Sorry,
a great coach.
that out there.
That is, Villanova now is all of a sudden near, if not at the top of that list.
Right. They end up getting one of the recruits that left Arizona, with Arizona involved in the shoe scandal.
Right.
He's decided to come to Villanova. So the kids out there, their eyes are on Villanova as a viable option, one of the top programs.
We have Jason Capel coming on a little bit later. We'll talk more about this game. All right, coming up, could the Patriots really be moving on from Rob Gronkowski? Talk about that next on First Things First. Anyway, hey, have we seen the last of Gronk in New England? Because rumors are swirling that Bill Belichick is frustrated with the fact that his tight end hasn't been willing to fully commit to the Pats this season. Oh, but don't worry, because rumors are also swirling that Gronk is equally as frustrated with the strict confines of the Patriot way. No official word from either side, but it appears as if things could potentially be getting contentious in New England. Cece, could the Patriots really trade Gronkowski? You think that's something that's actually on the table?
Anyone's been following the Patriots through the years. No, anyone can be traded except Tom Brady. Like, we all know that. There's no one that Bill Belichick won't trade. I mean, anyone. Anyone in that organization, well, the Krafts, the Sons, and Brady.
The adopted son, Tom Brady, the one that
the anointed.
Robert Kraft told you was another son of his.
Yes, that's it. Anyone else in New England, as we can see with the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, equipment guy, doctors, like all those people can go. And Belichick will get rid of most of them. But Gronk can be traded. But my thing is, I believe that Gronk, he has let this information get out there, but I believe Gronk is smart enough to realize that things would be different in his life without Tom Brady. So he doesn't necessarily like how they do things in New England, but he's also understanding that, wow, man, they come up with a great game plan for me week in, week out. They put me outside. They find the mismatches in every defense. So every game I'm in with New England, I got a chance to be a superstar, especially with TB12 throwing the ball to him. So, yes, Gronk might not be happy with the situation there. And New England, of course, they can trade. They'll trade anyone.
Right.
We've seen them trade some of their best players. And that's one of Bill Belichick's things that he does. He likes to get out of a relationship at the right time for him. When he feels like you might have a little more football left in you, but your interest has started to change, or I have to give you a new contract, that's when Belichick typically gets off of those players.
I think Rob Gronkowski would love to be a free agent. I don't know that he would love to be traded.
Well, he's not going to ever be a free agent.
Agreed. That's the point that Rob is unhappy in New England, or at least not as happy as he would like to be in New England. And if he could pick a team to go to, I'm sure he'd love to do that. But that's not the situation which he's in. He's got 2 years left on his contract. The Patriots would, if they wanted to,
at a reasonable number.
At a very reasonable number, which, by the way, I think you could argue might make him more likely to be traded, only because you have 2 years of a reasonable number for an excellent player. That is a more attractive asset. We talked about Odell being available, right? Odell, I believe, to be a better player than Rob Gronkowski. It's close, but I believe Odell's better. But if you trade for Odell, what comes with that is you have to instantly give him an enormous contract. Trade for Gronk, you got him for $8 million this year, $9 million next year. But there's an aspect to this that I think that people are forgetting or not considering, which is what was the Patriots' major free agent loss this offseason? Nate Solder, their left tackle. When we talk about Rob Gronkowski, the highlights are obviously him wreaking havoc as a pass catcher. But what is one of the things everyone says about Rob Gronkowski? Absent of pass catching, the best blocking tight end in football. We also know how paramount Tom Brady's health is, particularly now that they have no backup plan at quarterback. Not that there was ever a great non-Tom Brady plan. How much are you willing to put Brady at risk? How much are you willing to put your running game at risk in the same offseason if you lose your best offensive lineman and your best down-the-line blocker in Rob Gronkowski? Like, there is an aspect to that. I know people will be like, last 2 years, 12-1 without Gronk. They're fine without Gronk. You go a little deeper into the actual football part of it. With the loss of Nate Solder, Gronk, to me, becomes more valuable than he had been.
I don't know if Rob Gronkowski is as tradable as we think he is, because he has gone away from the Patriot way more than any other player on that team. Things he said, the things he's done, the hit he had last year. I mean, if anyone has strayed from Bill Belichick's sort of, confining modes, I think it's been Rob Gronkowski, and there's never been an instance or a conversation we've had where he's been on the trading block in any way. You talk about this concept of all in. Is he all in on this team? What does that really mean? I mean,
he's not. He's not all in.
What does all in mean? I mean, what happens at this point in the season? We're in April. What does all in mean that Belichick would say, "Oh, this guy does want to be here or doesn't want to be here"?
Well, the thing about Gronk has let the information get out that he's not happy with the way they do things, which is not surprising. I think it's hard to analyze football players in the offseason. Are they all in? It's the offseason. You don't have to be all in. You really don't have to be all in. Gronk has never said he wanted to be traded. We're basically talking about, because Gronk's not happy, will Belichick potentially trade him?
Exactly.
Because he's not happy. All right? Now, Belichick getting this information, I'm sure he's not surprised by it. I'm sure New England is looking at every option available for him, but I don't believe that Gronk necessarily helped himself if he was traded by saying that he didn't like it in New England, because I believe that Gronk's injuries, because a lot of times people forget who you are. Like, when you get his medical form, you're going to be like, wow, how much football does this guy have left? And if he doesn't like playing in New England, he doesn't like winning, wow, what's going to keep his attention in pro football after this one season? Like, I don't want to trade for Gronk and he's going to every year be like, is he going to retire or not? So I believe that Gronk, I believe it was his natural instinct to say, man, I'm questioning how long I want to do this. But in doing that, it's not going to endear him to a lot more teams than who would have been interested in Gronk's services.
And Gronk, I know people don't look at Gronk and say, that's a brilliant guy, but he's not a dumb person. And he knows where he plays and who he plays for. And he knows the implications when someone with his type of prominence and social media following goes on Instagram and Twitter. And it's one thing to congratulate Danny Amendola. It's another thing on Instagram and Twitter to say in all caps, you're free. He knows the reverberations that will have on shows like this, and most importantly, in New England. And he chose to do it anyway, and so we'll see how Belichick feels about it.
All right, let's talk some basketball on the other side. Coming up are the Rockets in the driver's seat for the title. Next on First Things First. Time for stories to start your morning. Villanova dominated Michigan last night, 79-62, to take home their second title in 3 years. Wildcats were led by sixth man Dante DiVincenzo, who dropped in 31 points, took home the Most Outstanding Player award. It was a great season for Villanova. Nick, how was Nova able to dominate the Wolverines?
After basically about 15 minutes of the Wolverines playing their style of basketball, Nova started hitting shots, and it felt to me a little bit like Michigan went away from their game plan. You saw a few times, particularly early in the second half, Nova came down, hit a shot, and Michigan did what you can't do against this team. Take a quick bad shot. You take a quick bad shot against Villanova, you're drawing dead. You got to basically play a perfect game to beat this team when they're fully healthy anyway, and they got away from their game plan. And Cece, you brought up Mo Wagner, like, They didn't get their best player the ball.
Yeah, he should get more than 11 shots. He played 33 minutes. He dominated the beginning, the first 10 minutes of the game. You got to get him more shots than that. But also you have to look at the veteran players and Jay Wright, everyone deferring offensively to go to Dante. Like, we're going to run the offense through him. That was not the plan A. That was not plan B. But in this game, they decided that was the best thing to do. That's how Nova gets that win.
It was great.
All right, congratulations to them. To the NFL now, Jimmy Garoppolo went 5-0 as a starter for the 49ers last season. That was more than enough for head coach Kyle Shanahan, who said he knew Jimmy G was their guy after just 3 games. 49ers gave Garoppolo a 5-year, $137.5 million contract this offseason. So, hey, hopefully 3 games was enough. So, CeCe, what are realistic expectations for Jimmy G this season?
Get San Francisco into the playoffs.
Ooh. Playoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the question was. What's the expectations, Chris?
Right.
Chris said get them to the playoffs. Like, absolutely. Get into the playoffs. You look at the competition they have in that division. Look at Seattle. Seattle's coming back to the field. Arizona's in transition, looking for a quarterback with a new coach. Yes, absolutely. San Francisco should have their eyes set on the playoffs.
Man, if they were in the AFC, I might agree with you. I think fair expectations are getting to 8 wins, maybe 9 wins. The one team you left out in their division is, I think, an excellent team in the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, I know they're the best. I thought the fans would know that.
Okay.
I mean, you got to give them some credit.
Of course.
They're getting up in the morning at 6:30 to watch a sports show. Hey, the Rams are pretty good.
Fair enough. In order to get a wild card in the NFC, I think you're probably going to need, like you did last year, 11-plus wins, and I think the Rams are better than them. So I think you can have a successful season in San Francisco without making the postseason. You got to keep in mind, up until Jimmy G took over, this was a team that was competing for the number 2 pick of the draft before they went on that 5-game winning streak. I think 8 or 9
How many games
wins.
did they win in a row just in the season?
5 straight games.
Yeah. After you win 5 straight games, you're thinking about getting into the playoffs.
Okay.
An NFL team.
All right. Hey, how important is a good night's sleep? Very important if you're Klay Thompson, apparently. So in a recent podcast, Kevin Durant let us in on a little secret. Klay slept through practice the day before he went off for 60 points against the Pacers last season. Nick, how much more impressive does that make Klay's 60-point game?
Man, here's the thing. If you were to tell me NBA player's going to sleep through practice and his teammates are not going to be that surprised, not going to be that angry, and just laugh about it like, it's Klay, I would have guessed it was Klay Thompson. Like, Klay is known. What do you always say, CC? He's the coolest guy on the Warriors.
Oh, definitely.
The chillest guy on the Warriors, I might say. Listen, he talked about it in the podcast. I listened to it. He's like, we called Klay, and we're like, what happened? He's like, man, when I woke up, I was an hour and a half late already. I figured I might as well just get some more sleep. And then he dropped 60 points in, I believe, 29 minutes the next night. I don't think there's many guys in the league that can do that. Klay Thompson's one of them.
It's an impressive thing, especially because you know your schedule. And you get anxiety to be able to come out the next night. But I'm not surprised with Klay. I'm not surprised, though. Of all the Warriors, of their 3 stars, that was the one, as you said, one of them overslept, next night got 60. I've been like, that's probably Klay.
Yeah, the oversleeping is the context.
Yeah, KD would have had one of his Twitter accounts wake him up.
Hey, finally, we're talking Tiger Woods. So the Masters starts on Thursday. The buzz starts today with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson being paired together for a practice round. Tiger will be looking to take home his 5th green jacket. What are fair expectations, CC, for Tiger heading into Augusta?
I know Tiger Woods. The fair expectations for him would be to take home his 5th green jacket.
Yeah.
And the reason why is he knows this golf course. This is his favorite golf tournament of all. He's won it 4 times. The golf course sets up for his skill if he can hit his driver. Now, listening to Freddie Couples do an interview after yesterday's practice round with Tiger Woods. Tiger's made a couple of different changes in his equipment leading up to this event. He struggled with his driver. He struggled with his 3-wood as far as can he hit those things from right to left compared to hitting them left to right, because on Augusta, the par 5s, that's what you have to do. He's put a lighter shaft in both of those. Freddie said on the first tee, if you know Augusta National, he carries it over the first bunker, which is about a 305 carry. That was his first swing of the day. He said that's the most impressive ball striking that he's seen Tiger Woods in a long, long time. So hearing that, knowing how he's played, knowing inside how much they love this course, and be able to come back. This is not a comeback like his previous comebacks at the Masters. This is Tiger Woods is returning healthy returning. He's not just returning to golf. He's played a few tournaments leading up to this, which I believe will get his nerves ready for the weekend. Tiger Woods should be the favorite at Augusta in 2018.
Listen, you pointed out the Fred Couples interview, so I listened to it. Hearing a guy that's obviously, I mean, he seems like he is something of a fan of Tiger Woods, but a pro, an all-time great, talk about him in these terms is exciting. Now, I know his former coach, Hank Haney, came out and said, the idea that Tiger's even one of the top 10 favorites is ridiculous. There's some bitterness there in my eyes. When you watch what Tiger did over the last month, when you watch him come in second with a putt to force a playoff at the Valspar, that was a tournament he couldn't score in the par fives, and he still did that well. Then you watched him the following weekend in one of the toughest fields, where dominate on the par fives, and if not for an out-of-bounds shot on the fourth, the final hole of the tournament, he was potentially going to make a charge up the leaderboard where Rory ended up running away with it, but Henrik Stenson, right, Rory ended up being great, but at the time, it looked like Tiger could go get it. Cece, where are the scoring holes at Augusta, primarily? The beginning or the end of the 18?
On the back nine.
On the back nine. That's another reason this is great for Tiger, is because we know that Tiger's first hole of a tournament, first hole of a round, particularly first hole of a tournament, doesn't always go great for him. That first drive, first shot, if you blow an opportunity at a scoring hole early, if one of the easier holes is the first hole, that's not great for Tiger. But once he's in a rhythm, once you get to holes 14, 15, 16, he's in a rhythm, that sets up brilliantly for him. And, Cece, what you've talked about, his erratic nature with the drivers, Augusta's a little more forgiving.
Very forgiving.
Because of how wide the fairways are. Like, all these things, I know it's rose-colored glasses, but for all those actual golf reasons, I think he should absolutely be near the top of the favorites, if not the favorite.
Can you imagine if Tiger Woods, having gone through everything he's been through in the last couple of years, comes back to win his 5th Masters? Can you imagine what that would do for golf?
Yeah, I see what it's doing for golf. It's got us watching. When Tiger Woods shows up to a tournament, twice as many people are watching that event, and there is a reason. But, as Nick said, we're watching something historic here.
Yeah.
There's never been a PGA Tour player have a fused lower back, and that's where Tiger Woods is, and I expect him to win another major this year, and I'm hoping it's this Sunday.
Oh, that'd be so amazing.
All right, new topic now. So at the start of the basketball season, the Warriors were the overwhelming favorites to win it all. Overwhelming. Now with injuries up and down that roster, not so much. According to major sports books, the Rockets and Warriors both have the same odds to win the NBA title. Both teams sit at 1 and 2 in the Western Conference, so that just adds to the drama. Nick, are these teams really that even?
Well, right now they're not even. Right now the Rockets are better than them. Right, just listen, right now the Rockets played 41 games with their best 3 players, Harden, CP3, and Clint Capella. They are 39-2 in those games. To beat the Rockets in a series, you're going to have to beat them 4 times. Assuming those top 3 guys are playing, you're going to have to do something in a 7-game stretch that has not been done, it's been done half as many times in a 41-game stretch. But what this tells me, because this was shocking to me, that I saw that the general Vegas sportsbook consensus now is Rockets-Warriors, even odds. But depending on where you shop the line, it could be a little different, but basically even odds. What this tells me is Vegas thinks what Chris Broussard thinks is the case, what Chris Carter thinks is the case, and what I have dismissed as a possibility, that the Warriors could possibly got in the first round. They are baking that into the number, that the Warriors, without Steph Curry in the first round, that the Rockets might not have to beat them. Because what the doctors are telling is that Steph should be fully healthy come round 3 of the playoffs. We know that Durant and Clay and Draymond Green, those injuries are not ones you're worried about a month from now. I don't even think they're really worried about those injuries right now. Clay is back. Their guys are back. What this is telling me is, because I do think if the Rockets and the Warriors face in the Western Conference Finals, Vegas would say the Warriors are favorites whether they should be or not. Vegas thinks, the public thinks, that the Warriors are vulnerable in round 1. That a series for them without Steph Curry, even with a healthy Kevin Durant, even with the rest of their roster, that they could lose in round 1, and they don't think that about Houston, and that's fascinating to me.
I'm surprised for a different reason. I'm surprised that Houston is not the favorite more so than Golden State.
Wow.
I don't think that they should be even money. I know that Vegas is giving the respect to the Warriors, but Houston has been more consistent. Steph is out with an MCL. This is week number 2, and he could be out as much as 6 weeks. So for me, even if he does come back, I know he's not going to be 100%. Now, when the doctor tells you come back between 2 and 6 weeks, he's talking about for a normal person.
Right.
A normal person, 2 to 6 weeks. He's not saying for you to be playing championship basketball, to be in a highly contested sporting event. No, that is not baked in there. So I think Houston should be the favorite over Golden State. I don't think their odds should be even.
Cece, do you think that Steph, whenever he comes back, is not that he's not going to be back to 100% this season? Is that correct?
There's no one else we've seen with the MCL. KD talked about it. Steph, when he had it last time, that first week to 10 days, they are not healthy. Like, they are struggling. We're talking about the competition, the intensity of playoff basketball. Let's not lose sight of that. KD was out 6 weeks, and they'll tell you, they did not come back healthy. Why would we think Steph would come back healthy? Like, this is not a matter of, oh, this guy's a fast healer. We're talking about a ligament to your knee, the MCL.
Right.
So I do believe he will be hampered throughout the playoffs.
I have a question. If at the beginning of the season we said the Warriors, coming off the last couple of years that they've had, we're going to go into the playoffs without Steph Curry, is there any doubt that they'd still be as dominant?
As dominant, they wouldn't be as dominant. But I think if in game 1 of this year, Steph Curry blew his ACL.
And he was out.
And he was out for the year. I think going into game 2, the Warriors still would have been the Vegas favorites. But that was before we knew what we know about Houston. Like, the other part of this is how great Houston has been.
Yeah, I think it'd be a little bit different because you have the whole season develop a different style for Golden State.
Right.
So it's hard to make that comparison because he is coming back, and they would be a different team.
So your hesitation about the Warriors is not so much that Steph's not in it, is that whole offense runs around Steph Curry, and they don't have enough time right now to game plan an entirely new offense if you don't think he's going to be 100%.
None of the teams, the top 2 teams in the East, the top 2 teams in the West, none of those teams can afford to lose a starter, let alone someone like Steph Curry. Like, I think that we're just losing sight of how good these players are. Steph's not healthy. Wow, that's going to drastically affect the Warriors. Harden, if he wasn't healthy, it would drastically affect Houston.
But the reason that people feel differently about the Warriors is none of those other teams, and in fact, no other team in the history of the league has as their second option an MVP.
It doesn't matter. In this, it's still not enough talent to win a championship. That's the reason why they went out and got KD.
I agreed, which is why if we knew Steph was out for the year, out for the playoffs, this would not surprise me. But the fact that people are now wondering, is it enough talent to even get to the conference finals? Do you need a fully healthy Steph Curry to get through rounds 1 and rounds 2? That's crazy to me.
I just think we shouldn't analyze, they have 4 All-Stars, they have Hall of Famers. I don't believe that. When you have someone who runs the team, if Chris Paul was not available, what we think Houston's chances were? They got no chance. All right, so how would we be able to lose the point guard, Damian Lillard? They got no chance. They might not have a chance with Damian Lillard, but when you lose the guy who runs your offense, the most prolific offense that we have seen, especially in this 4-year window that they've played, they don't have enough time to adjust to that.
All right, let's break there. Guess what? The NFL draft is coming up. Is Josh Rosen too much of a millennial to be successful in the NFL as a quarterback? Somebody thinks
Everyone in the league's
That's next. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Chris Canty. Canty,
what up,
how you doing?
Good to see you, brother.
What's good? I'm good, Jenna. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing really well.
So you got the bright colors on.
Thank you. That is what I'm wearing.
Trying to bring some warmth.
Correct. That is what I am doing.
I appreciate that.
Do you see what's happening?
I see exactly what she's doing right now.
I'm
not on board with it, Jenna.
I refuse.
I know what you're doing.
Jenna thinks this is her not being awkward because yesterday Chris Canty called her awkward, and then of course Jenna's
I was striking up a conversation.
She's as awkward as can be.
Chris Canty.
So
we'll try again tomorrow, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Epic fail. We'll try that again tomorrow. High five. The NFL draft is right around the corner. Still time for draft picks to slide up and down based on literally anything. For Josh Rosen, it's been an interesting process. So he's been called a lot, right? A little cocky, a little arrogant, a little too intellectual. Now he's being called, wait for it, a millennial. Former UCLA coach Jim Mora Jr., who coached Rosen for 3 years, had this to say about his former quarterback, quote, he needs to be challenged intellectually so he doesn't get bored. He's a millennial. He wants to know why. Millennials, once they know why, they're good. Rosen tweeted this out. Why? Shrug emoji. Hashtag why. So, Chris, what did you make of Jim Mora's comments?
Well, I didn't understand where he was coming from in terms of when he said millennial and saying that he needs to be challenged, or I guess you got to engage him in this way. I think most professional athletes need to be challenged and stimulated in that way. You have to get them engaged so you can bring the best out of what that player might have to offer in terms of being able to produce on the field. So when you talk about a quarterback like Josh Rosen asking the questions, why are we doing things a certain way, I don't have an issue with that. To me, a player that wants to get to the why is going to have a better chance of being able to match his physical gifts and his skill sets and have that translate to production on the field. That's what it's all about. I don't need a guy that gets to the line of scrimmage and he panics because the look that the defense shows him on Sunday isn't what the coaches drew up for the scout team on Wednesday and Thursday. I need somebody that's capable of being able to think on their feet. And Josh Rosen strikes me as a quarterback that's capable of doing that based on what I saw on the college game tape and from what his coach is talking about him now. So I like the fact that a player wants to know why he's being asked to do certain things. I don't need a guy that's a robot on Sundays.
Yeah, a few things from what he said. I'm not a millennial, thank God, but I need to be challenged. I want to know why, and I need to be challenged even when I was in college. When I was in the pros, I need to be challenged. I'm not a millennial. I don't believe that they absolutely have to come together. What I think is going on with UCLA is I think that collectively that Jim Moore is part of the Josh Rosen team. And there was speculation that Josh potentially didn't want to go to Cleveland. I believe this is part of it. So the coach comes out with comments that would, because in deciding if he was going to go pro, the coach had a lot to do with it. There's no one in UCLA's program has more experience with pro football than Coach Moore. He also used to be a defensive back coach in the National Football League. We used to compete against him every summer with the New Orleans Saints, so I'm very familiar with Coach Moore. He is a great evaluator of talent. He does know what he's talking about, but I believe this is just a little bit of smoke for them to be able to get off the Cleveland team without them saying he does not want to go there, without him not looking bad, because he made a suggestion. I believe Cleveland should draft Sam Darnold. Now, why would he say that? I believe he loves Josh. I believe he believes Josh is a franchise quarterback. But Josh can't say he don't want to be in Cleveland, but I can. As a former NFL coach, the son of an NFL coach, I can say those things, and I can take the heat. So I believe collectively their group has decided he doesn't want to be in Cleveland. And the coach enunciated some of that by saying the things that he said. NFL players do want to be challenged. NFL players, from my understanding, they want to learn. They want to get better. And to get better, you need to find out why. And most NFL coaches, which I believe they're the best coaches, they are far superior than college and high school coaches. That's why they're in the NFL. They get to the why part, and that's how they make the players better.
And we got to be fair here and not forget who has Josh Rosen been the whole time we've known him, up until his name's called on draft day. He's a college athlete. A student athlete is what we're told. What is college about? Learning, asking questions, figuring things out, being intellectually curious outside of what your career vocation's going to be. I was a lot more scattershot. I think most of us were a lot more scattershot in college than we were once we became professionals. Once you become a professional, you are much more focused. It doesn't mean your brain turns off. It doesn't mean you stop having other things that interest you, but it does mean you now have a job that you're paid to focus your primary attention on. Like the idea that the curiosity is a bad thing, I just reject in basically every line of work except for, I guess you could argue, the military, where you just have, you know what I mean? You're supposed to just take orders, follow the chain of command. Cece, you sent me a video, Josh working with Aaron Rodgers. It was actually, I think it was like a Lincoln commercial, essentially, but it was long form, and he's doing a lot of things. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is Aaron is describing, I think it was back shoulder throws, but whatever he's describing, I've seen countless videos like this or instances like this where a pro is talking to a potential draft pick, and he says to him, you understand what I mean? And the guy just goes, yeah. And you know he doesn't actually understand it. He's just going along with it. What did Rosen do? Rosen actually stopped and said, wait, why? Explain it to me. I want that because he is going to be a rookie. He does have a lot to learn. Like someone that has a thirst for learning, I think is a positive, particularly at that position.
I just wonder, Chris, if the other part of this that bothers people is that he has a lot of outside interests. as opposed to maybe the intellectual side of it or the curiosity side of it, because there's this mentality in football that you want football players, especially young football players, to need, eat, breathe, desire, crave football, and not have football be like, I love football, but I love like 1,000 other things as well. Like when you come in, you want these guys to be, and you talked about this, Cece, completely committed to the craft wholeheartedly so that you coaches can coach you, so that you can learn, so that you can be the best you can be. And I wonder if putting it out there that Josh Rosen has all these outside interests, it makes it appear as if football is a hobby or his job as opposed to his lifeblood.
Well, here's the thing, Jenna. I think people are concerned that a player might not be as committed if they're interested in other things outside of football, but I don't think that's true. There's nothing wrong with being a balanced individual. And so when I hear all of the things about Josh Rosen in terms of he's a free thinker and he likes to, engage in conversations and stuff outside of topics that relate to football, I don't have a problem with that. I actually think that's a good thing to be a balanced person, because if you have somebody that's out of whack, so to speak, then you don't know that that person is going to be grounded enough to be consistent in his approach to his job. And I think that's the concern with a lot of teams that see guys with interests outside of football. Are you committed and do you love football versus is this something that you just you like the things that come along with it? So I think that's the question that has to be answered. But you don't know that unless you get into the interview process with Josh Rosen and have conversations.
Right. A player who went through a similar thing was Robert Smith at Ohio State. When he had a problem because he couldn't take a certain class because in his major, I think he was in pre-med at the time, was interested in being a doctor at Ohio State. The professor that was teaching the class in the spring, he could take that class, but he would have to miss some football practice. In Ohio State, we don't let players take classes after 1 o'clock because you're into the daily schedule. So Robert had a problem with that. So he had some of these same questions. Does he love football? Is he more interested in being a doctor? Is he more interested in his education? Is he too much of an intellectual? And this was a long time ago. So it's not as if we haven't had this question before. Most of these people, though, they're not in the NFL locker room. They don't realize there's a lot of bright people in there. There's a lot of bright coaches. And the more you can learn, the more you can learn does not put a ceiling on your potential. Regardless of what your ability is athletically, if you're not a learned person, your ceiling is limited to what you can be. The greatest athletes that we have seen, they also happen to be the people that are learned in their craft. And that elevates them above people who are just talented. Everyone in the league is talented. So what's going to separate you? Your ability to be able to learn something and apply it and apply that skill to your game. The locker room is full of people just like Josh Rosen. They just don't have the same background. They don't come from wealthy families. They don't have the things that he had going for him when they got to this point in their life.
And I happen to reject the premise that you can just lump millennials into one group and say this is how millennials are. But let's just say that's correct, because I know a lot of people feel that way. Oh, these millennials. Well, guess who Josh Rosen's going to be playing with? A bunch of millennials. Millennials are people born from 82 to 04. Like, basically everyone in the league, Aaron Rodgers' age or younger, is in that group. So if it is a lot of people he's going to be playing with that are intellectually curious, do have outside interests, that makes him relatable to them. We're seeing guys throughout with the more socially conscious athlete now, we're seeing guys show you that while they are extraordinary athletes and very dedicated to their craft, they do have outside interests. Like, to me, that makes you relatable as a rookie.
Right now in the NFL locker room, it's more geared towards millennials and how they teach things, how everything's applied, how everything is downloaded on the computers.
Yeah.
It is not fit for the generation before them. The NFL right now is fit for millennials, and that's why the league will continue to prosper.
Well, Chris Canty, I have no outside interest other than this show. This is literally
That's
only
true,
thing
Jenna. That's not true.
that is 100% true.
You are a gym rat, Jenna.
You're right. I have two
Exactly.
interests.
We'll be doing stuff related to the show.
2 interests. That's it. Just the gym and this show. Stop rolling your
Dustin,
eyes.
check it out.
Chris Carter. Stick around. Chris Canty coming up. Can Amari Cooper and the Raiders turn it around under John Gruden? It is the NFL offseason, and yet we have a lot of NFL season stuff to talk about. It's a great early April day.
A new paradigm in the NFL, it would appear. Trades are going to matter. Trades are going to happen. This was the one part.
I like the culture of the NFL.
This was the one thing that it felt like the NFL lagged behind baseball and particularly the NBA. The off-season transactions, the hot stove part of it. And now it seems like, well, the most prominent team in the league is at the forefront of it. It's great.
Should we start there? What? Tell me.
Let's start there. You know who can't be traded?
Who can't be traded?
Me.
Oh,
Let's do that.
No trade clause in his contract. Absolutely, and I would hold out.
All right, so let's
Jenna.
talk about it. I
Jenna.
can't be traded, CC.
No,
Patriots.
New England called me. I told them. They want
She's
two,
not
they
available.
No, they was giving me 2 number 1s and Brady. I told them Brady ain't going to beat time. I'll still take Jenna.
Love you, Chris Carter. Patriots making moves this offseason. They giveth and they taketh. That's how trades work. Yesterday, they shipped receiver Brandon Cooks to the LA Rams in exchange for the 23rd overall pick. While the Pats move is interesting, what's really interesting is what's next in New England. They've got those 2 first-round picks, 5 picks in the top 95, plenty of draft ammo to move up or down. Are they rebuilding? Are they moving up to get a quarterback? Are they eyeing LeBron? So many questions that we need to wrap our smart little brains around. Chris Carter, I'll start with you. Let's start with what this means for the New England Patriots.
In the last year, New England, to me, I think it's very interesting that they've kind of changed their model. They've been far more aggressive as far as trades, draft picks, as far as acquiring players. Like they were, the only way I can kind of describe it is if they were in a hurry for the first time in the Belichick era. When I say in a hurry, it started last year when they traded for Brandon Cooks. That was one of the things that I thought, wow, that's not typically a trade that they would make because Brandon Cook, he's in the second to last year of his contract then. Are they going to give him a contract extension, given the numbers of what wide receivers are making? Like, that to me was and then they went after the kid from Carolina. You know, the defensive lineman.
Coney Ely.
Yeah,
they didn't pan out. They traded a draft pick for him. They go out and they signed Stephon Gilmore to a big money deal. They did a lot of things.
Then even during the season, we talked about the Garoppolo thing. Like they got off Garoppolo for a second-round pick.
They get off Dorsett for. They get off Brissett for Dorsett
from Indianapolis. So for me, it's like, wow, why are they rushing? And now to see that they've gotten off of Brandon Cook, well, you would seem to think that he had a successful season. Well, this is what happened. He's in the last year of his contract. And the way New England does business, if you don't agree before that last year comes up, you're going to have problems. That's the reason why it was so problematic with Malcolm Butler. Malcolm Butler was in the same situation. He was in the last year. They offered him extension. He didn't take it. And now they couldn't trade him, but he ended up having not the type of ending to a season, and they end up losing him for free. They don't like losing players for free. That's why they got off of Brandon Cook. Now the Rams are going to have to make a decision last year of his contract. What do we do? Do we sign him to a contract extension, which I believe that they will? But for me, New England, it seems like they're in a rush to win now. And I'm not using that from a negative connotation. They're just in more of a rush than I've ever seen them. And I think that they're trying to take advantage of this Tom Brady window, but they have a lot of other things going on. Last year at this time, I was so confident in New England of what type of team I thought they were going to put on the field. Right now, I'm not saying I just don't know. I don't know who's going to be their left tackle, and they haven't depended on draft picks like this. That, to me, that's what it means. Are they going to depend on all these draft picks to play with Tom Brady at 40? I don't think so. I don't think they're done willing and dealing. They have relied on veteran players. It's a system built for veteran players, and now they have all these draft picks. You know, so what are they going to do with them? All
right, so my initial immediate takeaway when I saw this is we now know they are not trading Rob Gronkowski.
Yes.
You cannot. You already lost Amendola. You've now traded away Brandon Cooks. Julian Edelman's coming off an ACL. You're not trading Rob Gronkowski. My second immediate...
You got him 2 years on the books
right,
at a good number.
He's not a guy that you need to agree to a contract extension to. You probably feel like after these 2 years of Gronk, he might be done playing football. We have the hammer of the franchise tag, which never been used on him. So Gronk is either going to be retired or a Patriot this year. I'm confident in that. My second reaction was, man, there's no team in sports better at the transaction than the Patriots. Now, they miss on draft picks somewhat often. Really almost in line with league average. Like, they haven't figured out the draft. But what they did with Brandon Cooks was they traded away the 32nd pick for Brandon Cooks, got a year out of him, and then traded him away for the 23rd pick. So they got 1 year of service and moved up 9 spots in the draft. So they're very good at this part of it. And my final thought was Nate Solder. and I know I brought up Nate Solder when we were talking about Gronk, and people, it's not sexy to talk about offensive linemen, but we know they've had Matt Light and Nate Solder at their tackle position for the entirety of the Brady era, for the left tackle position. Barring injury, those have been the two guys. They were in a position where he signed somewhere else in free agency. There is not a free agent available I think they are comfortable signing at this point in the market to be their left tackle. So I think they wanted more draft ammunition. There's a couple of guys I think they're targeting. One of them, I'd be surprised if they're targeting Orlando Brown, but Colton Miller, he's 6'8". He's out of UCLA. Solder, 6'8". Also, Mike McGlinchey, a 6'8" tackle out of Notre Dame. I would imagine the Patriots are saying, we have to leave the first round of this draft with our left tackle. We now have more ammunition to make sure that happens.
I like you looking at it that way because right now, if you look inside the New England Patriots in their draft board, in the draft room, they have a board in there. I guarantee those two names are way, way up there.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Tom Brady, what they're trying to do, what they do offensively, I mean, they're going to keep the tight end in now and have him block him and help out for that left tackle? Or do they get the best prospect in college football and bring him into the fold? Yeah,
but let me ask you a question. What do you think Brady's reaction was? Because I bet Brady's reaction last year when they traded for Brandon Cooks was, this is awesome, like another weapon. But now when he sees Amendola leave, he sees Dion Lewis leave, who he likes out of the backfield, and now he sees Brandon Cooks leave for something he can't touch. They didn't trade him for a player. They traded him for a pick. What do you think Brady's reaction to that is?
Wherever he was, he couldn't have been happy. Because now, as a veteran, Now, Tom gave us, man, he gave us a little insight into his life in Tom versus time. Now Tom's got to bend over backwards for another wide receiver, whatever his personality is. Belichick and them, they don't care. They're going to bring in someone. And Tom's got to open himself up to learn this guy, try to bring this guy up to speed compared to what about some carryover from last year? Now, to me, I don't believe Chris Hogan, who's on their roster, is the answer. So New England, are they going to put another young wide receiver, which they've missed in the draft, or did they see something in Philip Dorsett, the former first-round pick from University of Miami, with Indianapolis, who they in the Jacoby Brissett trade?
Yep.
Did they see something in him in a year with him? Because what it tells me is they did not see enough in Brandon Cook in this year to be able to sign him and keep him going forward.
And they did, just real quick, just want to clarify, they did talk to him about an extension, but the money he wanted was not in line with what they wanted to give him.
Don't you think it's interesting that they put so much stock in what Brady thinks to the point where Robert Kraft invited him into a meeting last year and he basically orchestrated the whole getting Jimmy Garoppolo out of there, but he can't get a wide receiver to stay 2 or 3 years that he's comfortable with? Just a thought. Secondly, here's my question to you. So now they get rid of Nate Solder, we talked about, and Amendola, and Dion Lewis, and Malcolm Butler. Which is the most important position that they need to fill now?
Well, right now I think it's left tackle. I don't think there's a...
You got a 40-year-old quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's left tackle. But I also think when you talk about those guys, I think it is worth noting that every single guy we just mentioned, including and add Brandon Cooks to the list, were guys they tried to re-sign, guys they would have liked to bring back, but the price became too steep. And I know, CC, like, there is sometimes, if anyone's ever been to an auction, okay, whoever wins an auction for an item, they almost by definition have overpaid because they have raised their paddle when everyone else says that's too much. So almost by definition, you've overpaid. The Pats refuse. Mangini talks about this. They have a walk-away number, and they walk away. And that has served them very well. It's one of the reasons they don't ever have these bad contracts that are killing their cap.
They do not have one bad contract on their roster.
Well, that's why you say they're so good at transactions.
Right. But there is a downside to that. The downside to that is sometimes you run out of players. Sometimes all of a sudden it's like, man, we'd love to have Danny Amendola back, but not at $6 million a year. We'd love to have Brandon Cooks back, but not at $14 million a year. We'd love to have Nate Solder back, but not at $11 million a year. And then it's like, oh, so we didn't sign any bad contracts, but now there's only bad football players left to sign to good contracts. Like, that is the risk that you run. So we'll see what they do with it.
Is there a team that has done more with less? Is there a team that has gone farther with other people's, if you want to call it trash, that they turn into treasure than the New England Patriots?
No one. No one's done.
So I don't think they're as concerned. All right, coming up.
They got a lot of conversion to be doing.
A lot of conversion.
Yeah.
A lot of trash to treasure conversion.
Yes.
Big Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday coming up. So don't make plans. Sit on your couch. Watch nothing but television because the question is Tiger showing signs he can win the Masters? What's next on First Things First?
This is the First Things First podcast. I'm Nick Wright, and before the show moves along, I want to tell you about today's show being brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring, posting your position to job sites and waiting for the right people to see it? ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way for you, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates just for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. These invitations have revolutionized how you find your next hire. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive, so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. That's ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
All right, here we go. Moving on to the Masters now. We already know it's a tradition unlike any other. And if Tiger Woods can somehow pull this off, it could be the comeback story unlike any other. Woods has won this tournament 4 times, most recently back in 2005. But then a sex scandal, and then back surgeries, and then an arrest, and then lots of pain. But now he is back, and he says he feels great. And Vegas says he's the favorite this weekend. Woods spoke about returning to form.
I'll be honest with you, it is crazy. I thought prior to the fusion surgery that that's pretty much it. I'll have a nice, comfortable, and great life, but I'll never be able to swing the club like I used to. Speed-wise, there's no way. Lower back fusion. But for some reason, I don't have any pain. Yes, I'm much tighter, but I don't have any pain. And I've had to really work on strength in different ways. And for some reason, it's come back. I wish I could tell you, I wish I knew, but all of a sudden I have this pop in my body and my speed's back and my timing.
Well, those are lethal things to happen to Tiger Woods if you're the competition watching that press conference. CC, what does Tiger need to do if he is, in fact, going to compete and then go on to win the Masters?
I think first people should get an understanding because of who he is. We said, okay, what's the expectations? They asked Tiger yesterday, and he said to win his 5th green jacket. But, you know, he mentioned one word that I think people should try to understand before you watch the Masters this week, and that was miracle. There's never been in the history of the PGA Tour a player play with a lower fused back. Tiger Woods, and I know through talking to people that are on his team, his agent, I mean, it was on the board. He would not play professional golf again. Now, he said, I wouldn't be able to swing a golf club like I did before. So he knew he'd be able to play golf with his kids, something that's very, very important to him. But to be able to compete, he thought that was totally over with. I mean, he has gone through such a dark part in his life in trying to get back healthy. He talked about yesterday falling down multiple times and just not being able to get up because he lost a feeling in his lower back, which led to nerve down his leg, which his leg would give out on him, and he didn't know when it was going to happen. He talked about not being able to get out of bed, and now we're talking about he realistically has a chance to win the Masters.
The Masters.
Okay, I just wanted to say all that first. Now, this is what Tiger Woods got to do. There's 8 holes at Augusta National that are by the designer. It's set up to go right to left.
Dog leg left, right?
Yes. So what they do, the undulation, TV doesn't give it a true understanding of how hilly it is. But typically on these holes that go right to left, there's mounding. There's huge hills out on the right. And these pros are this good, between 270 to 290 yards. They can hit the ball with a spin off of those hills that gives this carom. this carom effect where the ball bounds further. So you'll see guys drive the ball 370, 380 because of the way it's built, the undulation, and they're that kind of good. Tiger's been driving the ball left to right. All right, he's got his distance back. He's got his speed back. He's 34th on tour in distance, but he's about 200 as far as accuracy. So there's 8 holes. Hole number 2, hole number 5, hole number 8, hole number 9. Starting the back 9, hole number 10, hole number 13, par 5, hole number 14, and hole number 17. You have to be able to hit the ball right to left off the tee. Now, Tiger's made some adjustments. He's changed the shaft in his driver to a lighter weight, fiberglass shaft, graphite shaft. He's typically using steel. He's gone to longer shaft. So he's trying to get used to the lighter weight and the length of it. He's done that in his driver and his 3-wood. So driving the ball, when you watch it, if Tiger drives the ball well, they are going to have a hard time beating him. It's also, this course is set up for older players with more experience. There's so many tricks. There's so many what they call local knowledge that you have to be able to understand. And the veterans, that's why this is the smallest field on tour. That's why there's only 20 golfers, I believe, that really
can win it.
Yeah, it's not like the other tournaments.
It's a smaller field. There's only a few guys that really can win it because you have your guys that are grandfathered in because they've a lifetime exemption from winning it. You got your couple amateurs in it. So there's only a few guys that can win it. And if people want to envision the mound CeCe's talking about, think back to CeCe, I bet, knows which hole it was. But famously, Tiger, pre-Tiger proofing of Augusta, there was a 540-yard par 5 that he went driver wedge to the hole.
And they said, hole number 15.
Hole number 15. They said, okay.
The people of Augusta were embarrassed.
They said
how they set up the course. Like with these new type of golf players, Tiger Woods in particular, we need to do something.
Okay, so let's just talk about what he has to do to win. To win, drive accurate. If he drives accurate and putts anything like we've seen him putt and his short game the last 2 times we've seen him at the Valspar and the tournament after, he will be in the top 4. And then if he's in the top 4, I like his chances. You got to keep in mind this year, 1 putt percentage, 3rd on the PGA Tour. Putts per round, 3rd on the PGA Tour. Scoring average, 5th on the PGA Tour. That's despite, as CeCe mentioned, driving accuracy, not in the top 200 on the PGA Tour. And the other thing I'm so excited about, go ahead, Jenna.
No, go ahead, finish.
The other thing I'm so excited about is this. We have not seen Tiger at the weekend of a major tournament since the Masters in 2015. We haven't seen him make a cut in the major since the Masters of 2015. I would be shocked if he doesn't make the cut, and I think he is positioned. Vegas might have him slightly overinflated, but I'd be shocked if he's not in position to win this thing.
I know we talk about reasonable expectations of him winning. I would love to know what success means, how successful, if for it to be a successful weekend where he has to get to, and who else is in contention that you think at this point he'll be competing with?
Success for us as golf fans would be Tiger finishing in the top 5, that he's in contention on the back 9 on Sunday. But this is Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods won. It's like when you ask me, what about LeBron? I'm going with LeBron's expectations. That's not Tiger Woods' expectations. He says if I get myself in contention, he's expecting to win. So I'm telling you, expecting him to win is not outside of those possibilities.
You're pulling for Tiger. Give us a couple names that you think are good.
The reason why the 2018 Masters is special, not only because Tiger Woods is back, but it's also Dustin Johnson last year on the eve of the Masters, #1 player in the world, fell down in the property that he was renting at Augusta. So he couldn't play in last year's tournament. He's back. He has the perfect type of game for Augusta. Jordan Spieth, if he wins this major, it would be the fastest to win 4 majors, faster than Tiger Woods, faster than Jack Nicklaus. Also, if you look at
defending champ
Sergio coming back. So there are so many other great stories there. Roy McIlroy, he could finish the winning all 4 majors.
Yeah, he had his own slam.
Yeah, so that right there, these storylines are tremendous. That's why it's going to be an exciting weekend.
And Tiger. Coming up, will LeBron cakewalk to the finals for the 8th straight season? That's next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First. Let's talk sports.
We know you don't want to talk about your dancing.
Deshaun Watson's. You're like,
Please.
oh, your dancing's not fun, but I'll just talk about my dancing because as a middle-aged white man, my dancing is amazing.
First of all, I'm not middle. I don't know if any of those descriptors
Deshaun
are
Watson's fantastic
You're white?
rookie season.
Wait a second. Newsflash. Put that on the ticker.
Deshaun Watson's fantastic rookie season was cut short after 6 starts when he tore his ACL in practice. Head coach Bill O'Brien is not concerned about the quarterback bouncing back, saying, quote, he seems to have an instinct for being able to stay out of harm's way, although he didn't. CC, is there such a thing as injury-avoiding instincts?
Well, I mean, I just think if I had those superpowers before I got injured, well, my second time, this is not the first time I blew out my knee. This is the second time. I think that I would have probably had those. You push a button or something for those instincts when they kick in. I think he would have hit that button. He is a great athlete,
man.
But I'm telling you, man, injuries are like a silver bullet. I don't care who you are. When it hits you, like, it's going to kill you.
Listen, Deshaun Watson was one of the most exciting players in the league last year, and he only played a quarter of the season. I am hoping he stays healthy as can be. But, like, Cece, you were remarkably healthy for your entirety of your NFL career until your final season. Since you broke your collarbone once. Mm-hmm. Was that skill or luck?
Well, I just believe a lot of guys get into collisions. Some guys come out of them. I believe it's a God-given ability. Other guys, it's not. It's just they're unfortunate.
Right.
You know, they're not as flexible in their hips. Their joints and stuff are a little bit tighter. But they're playing sports. Like, if you play it long enough, you practice long enough, you're going to get hurt.
I think Bill O'Brien's trying to speak this into existence because he's had enough of the Tom Savage experience.
Yeah, you have to be fortunate. I don't believe in luck, but I like fortune being on my side.
Okay.
Basketball now. Potential Rookie of the Year Ben Simmons led the Sixers to a win last night. That's 11 straight for Philadelphia. And he did so on a night they honored 76ers great Julius Erving with his very own statue. Dr. J complimented Simmons, saying, quote, he's a once-in-a-lifetime player. Nick, you agree with Dr. J's comments on Ben Simmons?
I agree with the gist of them. Now, as CC would say, do people know how long a lifetime is?
Like, forever?
So, is he once in a lifetime? No. But is he a guy that I think has, if he develops anything close to a reliable jump shot, does he have the ability to be one of the 2 best players in the league? Yes, he does. So if you consider that once in a lifetime, sure. Like, this guy has every part of the game is a B+ or better, except for shooting. We'll see if he develops the shooting.
Hey, Philadelphia, tell me something. When I got drafted by the Eagles, Julius Erving was playing across the street in the Spectrum. What took y'all so long to get a statue? I mean, it's 2018. I mean, forget about Ben Simmons. I mean, they made the man wait forever. Man, he'll say anything.
Man, that's a great point. They put up a statue of a fake athlete, Rocky, before they put up a statue of a real.
Yeah, he ain't beat nobody. I mean, the Doc, man, was the man.
That's a great take.
You know, Rocky 3 also wasn't such a great
Hey, there's a better version of Ben Simmons in Cleveland. It's
James Harden went off last night for 38 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 assists. Harden continues his strong MVP push, and former MVP and teammate Kevin Durant thinks there is only one option, saying, quote, just give it to him. It's his time to win it. CC, is Durant right about Harden?
Oh, he is right. And it's nice to get confirmation from one of the other great players in the world. You know, arguably number 2 in the world. KD's got it right. Harden should have won 1 or 2 already. But typically, things like this happen. His teams haven't had great success in the postseason. And we do this thing where we pick apart people's numbers. Oh, Russell Westbrook. Oh, then the triple-double ain't what it used to be because they're giving him rebounds. Okay, well, Steph Curry, he was the unanimous, so let's pick his game apart. Like, that's what we have done. James Harden deserves a 2018 MVP.
Listen, I understand LeBron's campaigning that he believes he's the MVP. I understand why LeBron feels that way. They might win the same amount of games this year, or even more games this year than they did last year with Kyrie. But every time LeBron seems maybe he could make this a race, then you're like, oh, what Harden end up doing last night? Oh, 38, 10, and 9. Like, I mean, listen, the team's going to win 65-plus games. He is going to finish the year top 3 scoring and assists. Like, to me, this is a no-brainer.
And if there were concerns coming into the season besides the postseason playing with Chris Paul and others sharing the ball, he's answered that.
Absolutely. Best team in the league, best player on the best team. Give it to him.
And finally, the Thunder fell to the Warriors last night, 111-107. Russell Westbrook had a strong performance, 44 points, 16 rebounds. But the 6th seed Thunder have a lot of question marks heading into the playoffs. Nick, how do you evaluate the Thunder season?
Well, just one small critique I would have. When you say heading into the playoffs, I would call it trying to get into the playoffs. They are the 6th seed, so it sounds like they have a margin of error, but they are one whole game up on the 9 seed. You don't get in at the 9 seed, that's a tough loss for them. I understand they're playing Golden State. I understand KD had 24 in the first half, but you can't waste these 44, 16, and 6 nights from Russ. No. Listen, Paul George shooting less than 30% from 3 post All-Star. The story on George this year was best 3-point shooting season of his career. That's gone away. Melo, speaking of 3-point shooting, listen, man, maybe at 0 for 4 you keep shooting. I don't know if you keep shooting those threes at 0 for 8 because you finished 0 for 9. This was a game I have said.
That still could have been won.
That could have been won. And I've said for a few weeks now, the Thunder have had one clear blueprint to beating good teams since Christmas. Russ has to be awesome. Russ was awesome last night, and they blew an opportunity. And now I think they probably will make the playoffs, but it's absolutely in play. They draw this same team in the first round. You need Paul George playing as well as possible, not 5 for 19. This is, and I understand he's got to guard KD, so you got to recognize that's going to wear him down.
He's also said after the game he sort of lost his shot somewhere along the way. Can't seem to find it. Has to figure out how he's going to get back to that form again.
Well, don't have a lot of time to find it. Whatever he lost, he needs to find. You can't, if you tell me Russ is going to have 44, 16, and 6. KD only had 10 in the second half after 24 in the first. You can win that basketball game. You needed to win that basketball game. So I'm OKC, this is concerning for them.
Yeah, I'm concerned with OKC. You and I, probably about a month ago, there was a conversation about the most disappointing team. And I was like, man, you need to put the Cavs in the same conversation with OKC. You were on it. This became a debate show. It's not a debate show. It became a debate on that. You're like, Chris, OKC is the most disappointing team. I'm like, man, you got to put the Cavs in the same breath as them. I mean, OKC, they have not done themselves any favors. And not only is the seeding going to be worse for them if they do get in, I mean, they have set themselves up to lose in the first round.
Yeah.
How disappointing is that going to be after preseason hype of Paul George and Melo coming there, which would also end in Paul George leaving in free agency. Now, I believe there's 2 different conversations. Very disappointed in the Thunder, thought they would be better. And when you have that type of performance by Russ, where he is distributing, rebounding, taking the right types of shot, pushing the pace, you have to have someone as a 2 and a 3 to be able to help him out. This is what he did against the Warriors. Same type of performance. But when you don't have help, like we continue to say in this NBA, man, you can't win with 1 star. You can't win with 2 stars. You need at least 2.5 to 3 stars to be able to beat Houston, be able to beat Golden State. And right now, they don't have that. And I just believe this might affect, because last night I tried to put, because we can do this, I tried to put LeBron on the court. Because seeing Paul George, I don't know how excited LeBron would be to play with Paul George, the player he is right now. The Paul George I saw last night.
Right now or this season?
This moment.
The second half, say after the All-Star break.
Okay.
It became, with some of the rumors about Kawhi, would it be more entertaining to maybe potentially partner up with Kawhi compared to Paul George? So, OKC, I got questions about. But Paul George, what it means for him long term, I believe this is going to affect him and affect his overall destiny and who ends up playing basketball.
And listen, they have to find a way to win their first-round series. They won't do that if they're the 7 or 8 seed. You cannot last year win 47 games, lose in 5 in the first round, add Paul George, forget the Melo part of it, but add him as well.
Yes.
And then not even get out of the first round.
Win 47 games, which is what they're on pace to do, and lose in 5 in the first round.
If you make it to the playoffs.
You can't be the same team you were last year. You can't.
All right, let's talk about LeBron. We just discussed him a little bit. Wherever you fall on this guy, what you cannot argue is that when he's on the court, the Cavs can win, even when he's playing the best team in the East. Last night, his Cavs still not back at full strength, still without a starting rotation, still won, beating the Raptors 112-106. LeBron had 27 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. The Cavaliers have now won 9 of their last 10 games. LeBron James spoke on his team's future moving forward.
We don't know what we can become. We don't know. we have no idea, but Right now we're playing good ball. We want to try to continue that, but we don't know what we can become. We have not been whole all year.
All right, Nick, did the Cavs erase any doubt that they are the favorites in the East, despite what these standings tell us?
Yeah, I mean, you said they played the best team in the East. I was wondering, was it an inter-squad scrimmage?
Hilarious.
Because they're the best team in the East. They're
doing the best record in the East.
Listen, they don't have the best record in the East. They're right now going to struggle. I mean, they're going to get to around 50 wins, same as last year, by the way. But you watch, for them, there has to be an answer to the question if it's not Cleveland. And so the question, what has to go through your mind if you're trying to make the case is, but like a former NBA GM who I have a ton of respect for, Bobby Marks, was trying to make the case to me on Twitter last night that there's reason to be concerned about the Cavs. Then tell me if they're the question, who's the answer? Because I watched Toronto last night try to, OG Anunoby, rookie, you try to guard LeBron James. That's hilarious. Pascal Siakam, you guarded him and did a good job on him the last time you guys played when he went for 34 and 17. That didn't work out. All right, CJ Miles, you get a chance. LeBron looked like one of those cartoon characters when they put out the big steak in front of him with the saliva coming out when CJ Miles started checking him. So that's your triumvirate to go try to check LeBron James. So if it's not going to be them, who is it going to be? The Celtics? Well, if the Celtics were healthy, but they're not, and they're not going to be. The Celtics with Gordon Hayward and Kyrie and Marcus Smart, now that's a discussion. But that team has not existed but for 7 minutes all year. Philly, listen, I think Philly is the toughest matchup for them, but you simply don't go in the NBA from not making the playoffs to winning your conference. That's never how this goes, unless, like, we saw the Celtics do it when they added KG and Ray Allen. That's an outlier. Usually there's a progression. Look at the progression the Thunder had. The Thunder went from not making the playoffs to facing to taking the Lakers to 6 in the first round, to the next year going to the Western Conference Finals against the Mavericks, to then making the finals. So who's the answer to the question if it's not Cleveland? You have LeBron playing offensively as well as he's ever played, and the point he made there is important. They have played 0 games this year with their actual lineup. So whatever we think they are right now, theoretically, and I believe they should be better once they are healthy, and George Hill should be back before the postseason. So, I mean, who are the favorites in the East? The team with LeBron has been the case for the last decade. See?
Just pause for silence. Nick Wright, you were right. That's something I'm trying to teach you.
Oh.
I'm trying to teach you also.
Let me take it and I'll say it one more time, please.
Nick Wright was right about Cleveland. I was concerned. Jenna, you were concerned. And it's not as if we're not fans of LeBron's or fans of the Cavs. It was what was playing out in front of our eyes. I mean, multiple lineups. Kyrie, let's go back. Kyrie forces a trade. He wasn't happy. Forces a trade out of Cleveland. Man, LeBron hadn't played without no superstar like Kyrie. Like, how are they going to be able to get it done? And it's not our fault. Toronto, they are a better team. They're still just not as good as Cleveland. I mean, they got the best record at home. They got a great record on the road, 24 and 15. Their bench, it is deeper. The younger players, man, they are developing. But they still don't have no answer for the guy in Cleveland, in LBJ. And if he has a competent lineup with him, he has shown that you have to have an answer to him. And no one in the East has an answer to him unless it would be Philadelphia. And that would be not an answer to him, it would be Joel Embiid, who they wouldn't have an answer for. So no one in the East has an answer for LeBron. The only way you can fight that is to be able to have someone who is a once every generation type player in Joel Embiid. So to me, Toronto, these last 2 losses to Cleveland, these were critical. I mean, these are critical losses. And Nick, you and I were talking last night, and I just believe that a team that is trying to be special, and if their goal is trying to win an NBA championship, bring that championship to Toronto the first time, you question some of the judgment of their leaders.
I don't love what Kyle Lowry did. Kyle Lowry, I know you went to Villanova. I know you were part of what became this program. You are their biggest recruiting tool for 5 stars because you're the best pro they have.
Yes.
I get all that. You cannot be in San Antonio at a 9:20 East Coast tip-off for the national championship game the day before, back-to-backs against Cleveland and Boston. And if you are going to make that decision, if you are going to say, I can be and don't worry about it, what was he, 5 points last night?
I had to steal you.
What you can't be is 2 for 11 with 5 points after that. Like, I saw it.
People won't be thinking about and looking about, but when you have the type of athletic maturity, like, you know, these 2 games, and Boston was only 2 games behind them going into last night's game.
With the tiebreaker, and you play them on a back-to-back tonight. Like, Boston ended up losing last night, which helps them to where they now have some breathing room for the 1 seed. But this all falls apart on you if at the end of the year, after this great season, oh, guess what?
Right.
We're not even the 1 seed. All this stuff. And I am not saying Kyle Lowry necessarily would have played better had he not been in San Antonio for the national championship.
We wouldn't have to look at it.
But it was the worst game of the year for him. And you have talked about, CeCe, how because the roster is so new in Cleveland, these guys, aside from LeBron and Love and JR and Tristan, don't have the repeated history of beating these dudes in the head. And so they don't have that confidence. And some of the bench players on Toronto, they also don't have the feeling of these guys always beat us. This was an opportunity after you blew a game 2 weeks ago, and your team leader is in San Antonio the night before and goes for 5 points, worst game of the year. I don't love that. I don't love it, Kyle.
All right, Cavs win 9 of their last 10 games. Can't believe Nick was right. Nick was right, said CeCe. Hey, coming up, let's go back to some football.
Best thing is we're on to the next subject. He's going to be wrong.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're joined by Chris Canty.
Hey,
Lovely rainy Wednesday here in New York. How are you, Chris?
I'm great, Jenna. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing so well.
Okay.
Still awkward. Still awkward.
Without fail.
Still awkward.
I was trying to be cool about it.
You're doing better than okay.
Jenna, you were fine.
Wait, then why do we laugh? What are we laughing at?
I didn't laugh. I was smiling at you.
You are doing wonderfully, Jenna. Wonderfully.
Right,
I'm serious.
Thank you.
No problem.
Now to the big news in the NFL. Chris Canty, the news. The Patriots sending wide receiver Brandon Cooks to the Rams for a first-round pick. Cooks had over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns in just a season with the Patriots. And he will join an offense of Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Todd Gurley. The Rams continue to go all in as they added multiple stars on defense throughout the last few weeks, including Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib and Ndamukong Suh. They got quite a team now, Chris. What does this mean for the Rams? Is the project overhaul complete at this point?
Well, I don't know about complete. There's still a lot of offseason to go. They don't have a lot of draft capital, but we'll see what happens as veterans become available in the last parts of the offseason cycle. But when you start talking about what the Rams are doing, they're trying to capitalize on having a starting quarterback on a rookie contract. It's the same concept that we talk about with the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. So they lost a speed guy in free agency with Sammy Watkins. You add a speed guy in Brandon Cooks, somebody that can be a vertical threat, displace the defense. If you look at what Brandon Cooks brings to the table, 3 straight years of having 1,000 yards receiving or more, and he was tied for the NFL league lead in receptions of 20-plus yards downfield with DeAndre Hopkins. I believe he had 16. So he's a guy that can give you production in the downfield passing game, and he can be that threat toward the defense so teams can't stack the box against Todd Gurley in that running game. It's a prolific Rams offense. They were the number 1 scoring offense in the league, top 10 in passing and rushing, but they needed to have that element at outside vertical threat, and Brandon Cooks brings that.
So here's the thing. You alluded to what I believe is the single most important part of this. We have to start looking at the NFL as almost side-by-side leagues. Teams with a quarterback on a rookie contract and everybody else. Because what did Seattle do when they had Russell Wilson essentially for free? Because not only a rookie contract, but a third-round rookie contract. Man, bring in Michael Bennett. Bring in Cliff Averill. Let's just bring in guys. We have all this extra money with a franchise quarterback that's not being paid as such. People don't think about it this way. It's one of the reasons Philly's been able to add Jay Ajayi, reload this offseason. They have a franchise quarterback making this type of money.
And with the unexpected growth of the salary cap.
Right.
The salary cap's over $170 million now, too. So with that model, right now is the time. Like, it's even easier now to be able to do that model Seattle had, that you have to be able to add these veteran players before you have to pay this guy $120 million.
Right, and you got to take advantage in the here and now. The whole, well, let's wait until the quarterback's in his prime. By then, he's going to be making $30+ million. You're not going to have the room for it. So, like, what the Rams know is Aaron Donald's coming up. Todd Gurley, then Jared Goff. Also in 2019, free agents, LaMarcus Joyner, who they franchised this year. They traded for Marcus Peters. He's coming up the year after that. Like, go for it right now.
And Brandon Cooks, he's on a fifth-year option.
Right.
You're going to have to pay him. You don't trade a first-round draft pick without thinking you're going to extend him.
And so this is what I want to ask you about, CC, about Cooks, because you talked about the vertical threat. This was, a lot of people were skeptical when the Chiefs signed Sammy Watkins, that big deal. The Rams didn't want to pay him 3 years, $48 million. The Chiefs did. I know the Chiefs believe that Sammy is better than his numbers show last year because the knock on Jared Goff is accuracy downfield. So last year, he threw the ball. This is courtesy of Kean Fay, pre-snap reads. He threw 14 times where the ball traveled more than 20 yards in the air to Sammy Watkins. Only 2 of those were accurate. So there were only 2 of 14 deep passes, Sammy Watkins, that were accurate throws. He only completed, not surprisingly, only 2 of those 14. So what can Cooks do outside of get open deep if the quarterback is not great at making those particular throws?
Well, I think that Sean McVay and the coaching staff there, what they're going to do in Goff's 3rd year is they're going to put more of a demand for him to be better in that aspect of the passing game. They re-signed Tavon Austin, so he's their reverse speed guy, change of pace guy. But Brandon Cooks got to be down the field, a down the field threat. This is what I'm worried about with Brandon Cook. Sean Payton, one of the best play callers, they drafted him in the 1st round. Year 3, they gave up on him, traded him to New England. Man, New England's offense, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, they gave up on him in 1 season. I'm a little concerned about how good he can be as a wide receiver. Is he a fast guy, a track guy playing football? Or ultimately, is he going to have the upside that someone like Sammy Watkins we believe is going to have? That is a question that's going to have to be answered if the Rams win in this deal. Because when you trade a 1st-round pick, you're expecting to also sign him to a contract extension, but you are expecting him to develop as your number 1 wide receiver. And that's the part that only Brandon Cooks, he's going to have to answer that with his play this year.
Did the Patriots give up on him, or did he just not fit the mold of how they were going to do business re-signing? Because if he was, what would he have to do for them to say, you know what, this is the guy that we will actually keep around and re-sign, even though this is not usually what we do? What would you have liked to see out of him?
The problem in New England is that Tom Brady only makes $14 million. So when you come with a contract extension, their salary cap structure is totally different than anyone else.
Right.
Everyone else, their ceiling is, where's their quarterback? We just talked about Kirk Cousins. In Minnesota, the ceiling is $28 million. And then you start paying your players accordingly based on their value to the team.
Yeah, New England, it's $14 million.
It's $14 million. I mean, second receivers are getting $12 to $14 million. Sammy Watkins got $16 million. Brandon Cook had to be looking for, I mean, whatever you want to say, you got to give me $12 to $15 million. That's just not going to happen in New England because of the way the team is set up, Chris.
You're absolutely right, CC. And I hesitate to say they gave up on him, but I just don't think he was going to be included in their long-term plans, given the needs that they created this past season when they traded away Jimmy Garoppolo. You got to find a successor for Tom Brady. You know that Rob Gronkowski has had health issues. You lost Nate Solder in free agency, and you have to do something about your pass rush. So they have a lot of needs, and they needed draft capital to be able to address some of those needs this offseason. So they saw an opportunity. If they're not going to extend Brandon Cooks, it made sense to flip him for a first-round draft pick.
Yes.
Just quickly here, 20 seconds. On the Rams side of things, are they, to you now, one of the 3 favorites in the NFC?
I think you have to consider it. It's a young team, and you have a quarterback that's continuing to develop. Like you noted, he's got to improve on his down-the-field passing, but I think having the weapons there, having the threat of a Brandon Cooks is going to help. And, again, you got to do everything you can to try to make things easier on Todd Gurley.
Chris, we'll see you a little bit later in the show.
All right, sounds good.
Don't go anywhere. Coming up, talk some basketball again. Kevin Durant admits the Warriors are not invincible.
Not in the polka dots.
Next on First Things. What an NFL offseason it's been so far. Storyline after yet another storyline. Jerry Jones making news this morning with his assessment on how far apart his team is from the Eagles, his division rivals, and the defending Super Bowl champs. Cowboys finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs last season. Eagles finished 13-3 and missed nothing last season. Yet Jerry Jones says there isn't that big of a gap between the two teams. What do you think, Cece? How big of a gap is there between the Eagles and the Cowboys coming off what you saw last season and where they're heading this season?
I don't know what Jerry's looking at, but if we could trade rosters, there's no way that the owner, a friend of yours there in Philadelphia, would trade his roster for Jerry's roster there in Dallas. What has Dallas done since the Eagles were crowned Super Bowl champs to bring them closer, since the gap's not far away, Jerry? I mean, what have they done to get closer? I mean, Philadelphia, to me, is the team that, based on what they've done this offseason, they're the team that hadn't won. They're trying to win. They're trying to get to the mountaintop. They're not acting. Howie Roseman, their general manager, executive of the year in the NFL, in my book and a lot of other books, he's not thinking that they've won. He's thinking, man, how can I get this roster better? And that's what they've been constantly doing since they won Super Bowl 52. So, Jerry, I don't know what Jerry's looking at. They have salary cap restrictions, couldn't have a lot of movement in this free agency. They haven't gotten better since last year's team. Like, unless there's something going on in Dallas that we don't know about, that Dak has looked amazing in the offseason workouts. They've talked about talking to Dez about his role and potential salary reduction. That hadn't happened yet. He's signed a couple 2 and 3 receivers as far as that's their role. There are 2 and a 3, so I see a tremendous gap between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles and some other teams in the NFC.
Yeah, really.
Right, and the NFL free agency in 2018 is not like Major League Baseball free agency was in 2018, where a lot of really good players are still available a month into free agency. Even if they do get Dez to take a salary reduction, what are you doing with that money? Like, it's not as if there's, like, these great players that, when Dez takes a $6 million pay cut, we'll go get that. I mean, I just did a back-of-the-napkin thing here. The only position group that I think you hands down would rather have what Dallas has than what Philly has is running back. And that's because of Ezekiel Elliott. Like, I think Zeke is such a special player, even though Jay Ajayi and what they've done in Philadelphia at that position, I respect it. But Zeke's a special player. I can't even say I would hands down rather have the Cowboys' offensive line. And here's why. We saw one injury on the Cowboys' offensive line when Tyron Smith is out. All of a sudden, the entire offensive line plays worse. Jason Peters went out. The Eagles were fine. Like, also, I like
The Eagles have, like, 2 left tackles.
Right. I like Jason Kelsey at center. I like Brandon Brooks at guard. I love Lane Johnson at right tackle. And so even if you want to say, well, still the Cowboys have the better offensive line, but everything else, quarterback Philly, wide receivers Philly, tight end, backup quarterback Philly, tight end, no question Philly, defensive line, by a wide margin, Philly. Linebackers relatively close, but given Sean Lee's health concerns, Philly. Defensive backs, especially since they added Darryl Worley, Philly. How about this? Coaching and schematics, Philly.
And it's not even like Dallas didn't do anything. The Eagles did do things. The Eagles came off a Super Bowl and shored up their team, actually went out and kept working and tried to add pieces to their team when Dallas really hasn't, and the pool is obviously dwindling.
Right. If there's some question marks, you've been like, okay, what has happened? Okay, let's go to Philadelphia. Full disclosure, let's go Frank Wright. He left to be the head coach. Filippo left, the quarterback coach. He left to be the offensive coordinator in Minnesota. There have some... But I think those adjustments are easier compared to Dallas. Dallas made wholesale changes on their coaching staff, but basically having the same personnel. So they're telling the coaching staff, we're giving you the same personnel. We want you to get better results out of that. Also, add Mike Wallace to the receiving corps. You know, I think the receiving corps, I think Mike Wallace is a better receiver than Torrey Smith. So I think their receiving corps has a chance to be a lot better.
The D-line additions. How many players that Philly added would have been the best player Dallas added this offseason? Think about it like that. Philly's coming off the Super Bowl, the 13 wins. They were already well ahead of Dallas. Mike Wallace would have been Dallas's best free agent acquisition. Michael Bennett would have been Dallas's best free agent acquisition.
Yes.
I believe, I know you traded for Michael Bennett. I get that. Haloti Ngata would have been in the argument for Dallas's best offseason acquisition. I mentioned Darryl Worley earlier. Like, when Dallas's big star free agent they bring in is Allen Hurns. Like, and I like Allen Hurns as a player, actually. I think he's going to be better than he was in Jacksonville, but that gives you an idea.
And don't forget the signing of Chris Long for one more year. Look at the veteran leadership, the championship experience, the wealth of knowledge that they have. I mean, what's not a plan for at this point? Championships. I mean, everyone else in Philadelphia, there seems to be one common goal. It's amazing how you see the respect level. When people start talking about you in the off season, you know, that's out of respect. So it's nice. I'm for the people in Philadelphia that Dallas in the offseason, they will continue to be talking about them.
It's hard to say, well, the Eagles are going to repeat. They have what they had plus more. But so put that aside. Does it feel like another 9-7 season for the Cowboys? I know you have Zeke back now for those 6 games you lost him, but is that, looking at this roster, is that what it feels like to you?
Listen, I think it is. If you were to tell me they're either going 9-7 or 13-3, I think they're closer to the 9-7 team than a 13-3 team. But I think the point that you both made early on is Dallas. I respect the idea that Dallas is concerned with Philly, much like the Rockets early in the year. Daryl Morey, what did he say? We're obsessed with Golden State. Like, you put a target on the back of the best team, the champion.
But Daryl Morey also had the resources to go out. Yeah, I'm obsessed, but I'm also getting better.
Go out and do something about it.
But,
yes.
But when you realize, like, there's 5 teams in the NFC right now that I believe are clearly in a better position than Dallas. Philly, Minnesota, the Saints, the Rams, and I'm going to include Green Bay. Because once you get Aaron Rodgers back, like, we've seen what they do. And then, here's the group Dallas is in to me, with Carolina, with Atlanta, maybe San Francisco, but so throw San Francisco out. Carolina, Atlanta, Dallas. I listed 5 teams to me that are clearly ahead of them in the hierarchy, and then they're amongst those 3 teams right there. And we know, listen, I know we can't do this projection. One of those teams is going to be awful. There's going to be a team, maybe the Bears or somebody, all of a sudden is going to be great. We didn't see coming. But Dallas is in that a little slightly above the middle of the pack in the NFC. There's only 16 teams. I just told you 8 of them. Like, so Philly is right now the cream of the crop, but there's other teams between Dallas and Philly.
And those other teams, there's really not a book of how you're going to stop them. Minnesota, like, if you were facing their offense, you'd be like, man, I don't know what they're going to do. You know, they got the running back coming back. They got the wide receiver, Kirk Cousins. They can throw the ball. They're not going to be as conservative as they were. They got Green Bay. Like, how you stop Aaron Rodgers? Like, that's a mystery that no team has figured out. How you going to stop the Rams?
Yeah.
I know how to stop Dallas. Stop Zeke. So the league has a book on Dallas now. I thought after the 13-3 season, I told you, Nick, they'll come back down. They'll come back down about 3 games. They'll win about 10 games. They didn't get to that last year. I think they're about a 10-win season. So that's the kind of team that they have. Now, can they add a couple things? Either a good draft pick strategically. Can they pick up another veteran as we get closer to the mini camps and closer to training camp? Those things. This Dallas team is not a finished product. Some of these other teams, and I just believe when you have a book on someone, until they start throwing the ball and being effective throwing the ball, we know how to stop Dallas and beat Dallas. Those other teams, we don't know that.
Because it's not just about adding to this Cowboys team. You want Dak to have a big third year. You want Zeke to have a similar year that he had last year. So there are a lot of questions.
One thing to Dallas's credit, it's hard to play in Dallas. They haven't had a whole bunch of distractions. They haven't had the noise around the team that they've had maybe the last year and a half. So that right there might be worth something. That's worth watching. There's no noise. There's no bad news out of Dallas. So that right there, I'm sure, is refreshing for the players.
What are you guys doing at 10:24 this morning? How about at 10:42?
10:42, I'll be watching Tiger. At 10:24, I will be 18 minutes away from watching Tiger.
Well, that was the original question.
Exactly.
I wanted to know who was going to be 18 minutes away from watching Tiger Woods.
You're going to be watching with us, right?
Of course, obviously. Coming up, what does Tiger Woods have to do to be successful on day 1 of the Masters? It's day 1 of the Masters, by the way. Next on First and First.
Tiger.
Our new topic now, Tiger Woods tees off at 10:42 this morning because it's golf and punctuality is everything. Woods will hit Augusta National seeking to win his 5th Masters and his first major since 2008. A lot's happened since 2008 as Tiger has attempted multiple versions of this comeback story. However, this one could be the last as he heads into round 1 of the Masters this morning as confident as ever. CeCe, what would you consider a success for Tiger today on day 1?
Well, I know you guys talk about me. You kind of make fun about my weather, all right? The weather in Augusta is going to be very nice today, all right? It's going to be a little chillier this morning. Tiger, I think, is the 12th group off. All the groups tee off of number 1, so in succession they go off. So it's probably going to be tougher to score later in the day when the wind kicks up. But if Tiger could shoot, and I know this through walking I've walked a bunch of rounds with Tiger's family, Tiger's mom, Tiger's late dad, who was on the course, Tiger's agent. And one thing that they always tell me is Tiger gets very, very nervous at the beginning of tournaments. The first hole, the first 9 holes. So he's not the exuding confidence like people think. He's like a lot of normal people in these situations, and it takes him some time to calm down. If he's able to shoot under par, because this is not a tournament that you want to try to come back from. Tiger has done better when he's been in the lead. Now, he's played a great month of golf. So I believe he can shoot under par at the Masters. I believe 69. Par is 72. You should know as a sports fan, this is a big boys course, though. You have to hit the ball. You have to hit your driver off the tee. And if you start seeing Tiger Woods lay back, if he starts hitting 2 irons off the tee, 3-wood off the tee, watch out, because we want him to be aggressive. I believe he shoots 69, which is 3 under. I also believe on the first day, typically someone is going to shoot 67, 5 under. So you don't want to have to be chasing 7, 8 strokes, but it's important to be under par the first day and watch the first 9 holes. I believe that will be telling as far as Tiger's nerves and where his game is.
All right, so I want to get back to why it's particularly important at the Masters to be able to hit your driver off the tee in a moment. But about today's round specifically, this is something one of the newest members of our staff, Dave, who played some golf and brought this up in the morning meeting. I couldn't believe it. Tiger's played 20 rounds at the Masters. I'm sorry, 20 Masters tournaments. Mm-hmm. Day 1, he has only shot under 70 once. Mm-hmm. Only one time in those 20 Masters tournaments has he been under 70. His 4 wins, he shot 70, 70, 70, and then 74, actually, in his most recent Masters win back in 2005. So now the par is 72, so he's been 2 under most tournaments, 2 over the 1. Where he has made his work is Friday and Saturday. All of those wins, he's had either a 65 or a 66. One of those days, a couple of them, he had them both days. That is when he has really made up his ground.
What does that say? That he does come out a little cold when he starts?
It says exactly what Cece's saying. It says that it's tough for him to score on those opening 9 holes. The first Masters he ever won, his first round, he went 40 on the front 9.
Yes, 4 over par. 30
on the back 9.
Yes.
6 under par. So, if you see Tiger, as long as he is around, Cece said 69, I'm not going to argue with him. I would have said 70. Right there is a path to victory for him. Even if you do see a guy go out and shoot a 66.
Even if he has to play catch-up because the guy goes 500.
And the reason why, we haven't talked about it, why is there so much anticipation for the 2018 Masters? It's not only that Tiger Woods in the last month has come back and he's healthy, he's put himself in contention. It's not only that Phil Mickelson has won after a drought of several years. It's not that Bubba Watson has won. It's not that Dustin Johnson is back healthy, number 1, that he's won. It's not that Roy McIlroy, he can finish the Grand Slam. Mm-hmm. It's not that Jordan Spieth, he's dominated the Masters but only won one of them. It's all of these things in one happening. So that's why I think it's very important for Tiger to shoot a number like that, because out of these superstar players that we've seen, a lot of these players have not played with Tiger at a major under the gun. And I believe, just Tiger, you don't want to chase these guys down. You want to stay with them the whole way.
And I know you're going to talk about his hitting and what he needs to do, but there's also, we've seen a difference in Tiger and his approach to these tournaments at the beginning of them. Over the course of the last couple that he's played, he's changed from, I just want to be healthy and have fun, to, I want to win. I want to win the Masters, and that's very important.
The difference, I felt like the last few weeks, when he finished 2nd at Valspar and then was in contention until the final few holes of the tournament after, he was playing to contend. He was playing to be in the conversation. And he is now saying, I am playing to win. Now, he was playing to win come Sunday of each of those tournaments. But he was at a deficit because he had been conservative early on in those tournaments. All right, your point about not hitting 2-iron or even 3-wood off the tee and hitting your driver, because he will be able to reach greens in regulation even if he hits his 2-iron off the tee. But because of the way, you were talking about this before the show.
Yes.
Because of the way the greens are set up at Augusta, you want to be approaching with a 7, 8, 9 iron instead of a 4, 5, 6. Why?
Right. Now, Tiger, when he came back, and he might be able to get away with the 3-wood because he can hit it, especially if he can hit it from right to left. He can hit it almost as far as his driver. But he had to play conservative because he didn't have confidence was in the 3-wood or the driver, so he had to play back. We saw that when he was trying to win the tournament, he laid back off the tee and had a longer approach shot, the longest approach shot.
72nd hole at the Valspar.
Yeah, so that approach will not work. He has to play not reckless, but he's got to play aggressive golf. And even if his driver's not there, he's got to hit it and try to work through it, because these greens are not meant. Now, the golf clubs, a 2-iron is straight up and down. So the loft on it, there's not a lot of loft. So as you go to it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's more loft on the club. These greens are such undulation, hills, and mounds on the green also that you have to fly the ball high. So if you hit irons 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're not meant to be able to land soft and get close to the pin. If you hit 7, 8, 9, you can put the loft on it, the spin on it, that you can control it once it gets on the green and get it closer to the hole. So that is, when you're watching him, watch the Tiger hitting off the tee. It's going to show you how he's feeling and if he can be aggressive.
You want it, Masters in particular, I know it's going to sound basic because you're like, oh, every golf shot everywhere you want to do this. But on your approach shot to the green, you want it as high in the air and to land as close to the pin as possible, as opposed to running it up, as opposed to dealing with, okay, I'll hit more of a flat shot and deal with it that way because of the way CC described the greens as. That's why being able to hit your 9-iron, the way you can hit your 9-iron is if you use your driver. So that's why, again, we've talked all week about this. How can Tiger win? Be accurate with your driver. That's how he can win this tournament.
All right, day one, 10:42 a.m. Say that a couple times so you actually remember it. Coming up, talk some football. RG3 is back in the NFL, but can he still play football after a year away from the league? That's next on First Things First. Time for some stories to start your morning. Deshaun Watson had a great rookie season that was cut short with a torn ACL. His head coach, Bill O'Brien, saw enough in Watson's 6 starts, says the Texans will overhaul the offense to suit Watson's skill set. Nick, good move to build completely around a second-year quarterback?
This second-year quarterback, absolutely. And, man, I hope it's successful, because I feel like there's been a lot of talented quarterbacks, potentially talented quarterbacks, that we didn't get to see their full potential because for a long time we were trying to square peg round hole these guys. And if you see success with an offense geared around his specific skill sets, sustained success, then what does that mean for, well, a guy coming out in this year's draft like Lamar Jackson? What does it mean for other athletic quarterbacks that also can throw the ball really well? I hope this works out.
So, Nick, what it's going to look like? It's going to look like what we saw in those 6 games. They will emphasize a lot of deep passing. Even though Deshaun Watson, as a collegiate player, he's not effective throwing the ball deep. In the NFL, and especially with the type of wide receivers he has. Also, watch them to copycat a little bit what they saw with Nick Foles in the NFC Championship and in the Super Bowl. RPO, so he will have a read. It will be getting it out of his hand quick, just so he can continue to develop that rhythm. I expect big things from him in year number 2.
I agree.
All right, sticking with football, Des Bryant's destiny in Dallas is still up in the air. Cowboys CEO Stephen Jones recently said that Des and the team have yet to meet to discuss his future. The two sides are in a standstill over contract negotiations, and the team hasn't ruled out drafting a wide receiver. Cece, what does Dez's future in Dallas look like? Because it seems to change from day to day.
Well, I mean, I know this type of meeting. No one wants to have a meeting talking about your money. No one wants that meeting.
Unless you call the meeting. Unless it's the person getting paid calls the meeting. Sir, boss, I'd like to come talk about the money. That usually means you're asking for a raise.
Yeah, call me first before you do that, because I'll just tell you that's probably not going to end well. Nick, okay, I'm just going to give you, maybe since you look up to me just a little bit. All right? Like,
okay.
Dez's future's like Nick. It's short. Like, don't loan him no money. No, Dez got to concentrate on trying to get better. Whatever the money situation is, I would take a salary reduction. I believe he's worth more to the Cowboys. Tell them to give you some incentives. If I get a 1,000-yard season, which I haven't had, if I get 1,100, give me that back. If I get 1,200, if I get 10 touchdowns, give me that money back. I believe it should be worked out. Dez is more valuable for the Cowboys.
What I will say is this. The longer the Cowboys wait to have this uncomfortable conversation, the more, in my eyes, the leverage shifts towards Dez, because the more the wide receiver market dries up more. Is certainly if you wait until after the draft and you see if the Cowboys have or haven't taken a wide receiver. So, I mean, at some point, Dez's people will be able to say, What are you going to do with the money you're taking from him? Just put it in the owner's pocket? Like, the players are going to be gone. So if they want to have this conversation, they should have it sooner than later.
Jenna, you know, in relationships, you're better off just bringing it up as soon as possible. Ain't no need in waiting and putting it off because it's inevitable. We got to have this conversation, Jenna.
I know. We just did, didn't we?
We got to talk.
I hate that. We need to talk. That's the worst. Moving on to baseball now. Giancarlo Stanton followed up his 5-strikeout game with a big day yesterday. He hit his 3rd home run of the season, a 2-run shot. Nick, he's now on pace for 81
Good job,
this
Jenna.
year. Thank you. Every day, baby. Every
good
day.
job.
I'm just saying a couple of math things, and now I'm moving on.
Nice.
Following his lead, Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez each went deep for 2-run homers of their own. Yanks beat Tampa Bay 7-2. CeCe, how dangerous is this Yankees lineup, especially that middle meat?
We know the lineup is dangerous, but how healthy can they stay? The bottom of the lineup, you know they're going to have to save them at some point. But also, how consistent can they be? We know it's powerful, but how consistent can they be? And when they hit some type of slump, how bad is that slump? But I'm a Yankees fan. I was one of the ones booing when he striked out 5 times. Yesterday he gets up the bat, he launches one to left center. That's great. But then he struck out 3 more times. So then I'm back.
Listen, people got to know what they got with Giancarlo Stanton. He is pretty typically a 3-result guy. Like, strikeout, home run, walk. Like, this is who he is. He's not a guy that's going to hit a lot of, opposite field doubles. Like, this is who they added. Knowing who he was, we're excited to add him and pay him all the money they had signed with the Miami Marlins to. So you know who he is. It's the people behind him. Like, when he's the only bat in your lineup, as he was in Miami except for Yelich, like, then all of a sudden, if he has an 0-for-4 night, you're screwed. When you have Judge and Sanchez and then Didi, who, what did he have? Had 8 RBI the other day. Like, you're going to be fine. This is the best lineup in baseball. The Astros might be the best team in baseball because of the pitching staff. This is the best lineup in baseball.
Love it. All right, moving on to hoops. The 1-seed Raptors beat the 2-seed Celtics 96-78. They kind of demolished them. Toronto stretched their lead in the East to 3 games with 4 to play. Nick, can the Raptors be a serious threat to Cavaliers in the East?
They can't be that, but I will give them credit because last night was an important game. Like, I know Boston's shorthanded. Boston been beating folks shorthanded. They almost beat Milwaukee the day before. They beat a Utah team that was on a great run when they were shorthanded. So Toronto on a back-to-back after another devastating loss when Kyle Lowry had played his worst game of the year to win this game and win it. I mean, they only scored 14 points in the first quarter. They're down 20-14 after the first quarter. Then they played really well on both ends of the court afterwards. This basically locks up the 1 seed for them, so that's important. They avoid the Cavs until round 3. That's important, so good win for them.
Man, they had to win this game. And Boston being shorthanded the way they were in a 2-night span, they couldn't afford to lose this game. So Boston right now, to me, it's Manny Mannix yesterday talking about, Cleveland better watch out for Boston. He must have jinxed them because this was not a good night for me. You could look on the court and you've been like, okay, who is that for Boston? Okay, now who is that for Boston? Okay, I don't know that player either. I mean, they have some G League players out there playing.
What I will say is Boston right now is the 2 seed. I think they're hoping Miami falls to the 7. I think they'd much rather play Miami as the 7 than Washington as the 7. So just watch that as the last week of the season unfolds.
All right, lastly here, rumors are circulating that Lonzo Ball could be shut down for the season with a lingering knee injury, even though there's like a week left. Ball is averaging 10 points, 7 assists, 7 boards in his rookie year. Chris Carter, how do you evaluate Lonzo Ball's first season?
Well, you have to evaluate. You have to be very positive. I mean, you're looking at the rookie class and how all of them, for the most part, have struggled in some aspect. We've had 2 in Simmons, Donovan Mitchell. Those 2 are the highlight of this class. But if you tell me, okay, as a rookie, he's going to get 10, 7, and 7, like, there's some things in there that you can't teach. Like, you can't teach a kid to be unselfish. You can't teach a kid to be a floor leader. You can't make a guy rebound. We didn't know what kind of defender he'd been. He's been a positive as a defender. That's been a plus for him. So it's been a very good year. The Lakers, they can see moving forward, wow, this is the guy that we thought he was going to be. Maybe he doesn't have to necessarily change his jump shot, but he's got to be able to get in the gym to be able to be more consistent and to be able to get it off quicker. He's got to develop some more offensive weapons, finishing at the rim, some type of intermediate game or a floater game there in the lane. But I think that the Lakers, Their coaching staff has been positive in the things that they've said. And I know that Magic Johnson is positive with his overall attitude and how he's dealt with some adversity. He believes that's going to make him stronger going forward.
There's a few things that are overwhelmingly positive for Lonzo. One is, you mentioned the 10, 7, and 7. Like, only 4 rookies ever have put up the stat line Lonzo put up their rookie year. It's Oscar, it's Magic, it's Ben Simmons, it's Lonzo Ball. Now, no one is saying he's going to be Oscar or Magic. I don't think he's going to be Ben Simmons either. But the filling of the box score, the being better than average at the non-scoring parts of the game as a rookie, that's very difficult. We see a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who I think is going to be an excellent scorer in this league one day. He may never, at his peak, be as good of a passer and rebounder as Lonzo is right now.
Yes.
So, like, that's a big positive for him. I'm going to say another thing that's a positive that has kind of been underrated the last month and a half, and I think a positive for him moving into year 2. The dad doesn't seem as relevant anymore. Like, when's the last time, I know on this show we try not to talk about LeVar, but any of these shows, like the dad doesn't move the needle as much to where you almost feel forced to bring him into a Lonzo discussion. So why am I bringing him up now? The Lakers are going to be going after major free agents this offseason. And if the level of noise from the father had stayed consistent from day 1 to now we're in game 79, I think that could turn off some free agents. That has not been the case. And so those things work in his favor, I believe.
I know the numbers are great, and I know his line is great, and it puts him up there with elite rookies that have gone on to have incredible careers. So why does it feel like he hasn't lived up to the hype? Like, why are we even having this conversation? How do you evaluate his first?
Because this is what we do. We build kids up to tear them down. Like, there was no way when Magic Johnson drafted him and said he will be in the rafters one day as one of the Lakers great, that he was going to, there's no way, given the volume of information and noise that his family made, that he was going to be able to live up to that.
They all did him a disservice.
Well, that's here nor there, all right? We're evaluating the player, and the kid is a good kid. The Lakers organization, they like him. We can't control the hype, but when you look at it, what happens to rookies? You mentioned De'Aaron Fox. He was a great prospect coming in. What kind of rookie year did he have?
It's not like D. Fox was taking 20 picks after him, just a few picks later. Like, we talked about Malik Monk.
Yes.
Another top 10 pick.
In Charlotte.
We hadn't talked about Malik Monk once all year until we showed that highlight yesterday.
He was in the G League.
Exactly. So the fair comparison for Lonzo coming into the league was not Magic. It was always Jason Kidd. And so let's just, if he is done with his rookie year, show him side by side. Their rookie years. Jason Kidd was a slightly better scorer. They were near equivalent passers, and Lonzo's a slightly better rebounder. Like, if he continues on the Jason Kidd trajectory, a guy who is one of the 8 greatest point guards in the history of the league, everyone will say that it was a wildly successful career. Like, Lonzo he didn't exceed expectations, but I don't think he failed to meet realistic expectations either. What we didn't see coming was Donovan Mitchell and then Ben Simmons, the redshirt rookie, having these monster seasons along with Jason Tatum.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. Were you just thinking to yourself, you know, I haven't heard a lot about, in the last year, RG3. Well, the former rookie phenom quarterback is back on a team. Ravens are signing Robert Griffin III to a 1-year deal. Griffin wasn't on an NFL roster in 2017, played only 5 games in 2016. Both tremendous signs for a great 2018. CC, what do you think? Can he still be a productive quarterback?
I think he should be an adequate backup quarterback. How good he's going to be in the passing game, we just haven't seen him grow. We haven't seen his mechanics grow. He still has a fairly big windup. Now, when you start to become a mature quarterback, we forget that he ran a 4.3 because he can't utilize his speed since he got hurt his rookie season. So in trying to develop being a pocket passer, he hasn't had the type of accuracy that you want. But he is more than good enough as an athlete, as a thrower, to be a backup in this league. Like, he should have been in the league last year. With all the quarterbacks, this is how you continue to develop quarterbacks. You don't develop them by having them on the street. You develop them by having them on teams. RG3 is good enough. He was a starting quarterback in this league. I don't know why these guys, sometimes the league just gives up on them and they don't help cultivate them. I mean, I talk about him all the time. I mean, McCowan for the Jets, I mean, Mike, at no point was he a starter. No point was he as good as RG3. But he can be a backup. But RG3 can't be a backup. So for me, it's just kind of puzzling. You know, you get better by getting reps. And him being out of football, I don't believe it helped him. But he should have been in the league. I don't know why he was out of the league.
Here, I think a few things led to him being out of the league. And this is, to me, a little bit of a puzzling move by Baltimore. And here's why. One is, if you just do a Google search, RG3 teammates, what you will find Google News is stories from 2014, 2015, and 2016 about different, either anonymous or on the record or former teammates talking about how in the locker room, people don't love this guy. That is not typically what you want from your backup quarterback. Additionally, when he was a starter week 1 in Cleveland, I went back and watched how he hurt his shoulder because I had alluded to it yesterday. They're down 12. There's 3 minutes left in a football game in the fourth quarter. It's 3rd and 14. He's 6 yards short of the first down line. And he's on the out-of-bounds marker. And instead of just stepping out of bounds, he initiates contact. Coming off a major injury, he messes up his shoulder and misses 11 weeks. The other thing you want from your backup quarterback typically is the ability to stay healthy. So for those reasons, I understand why he is not the first person you call. Now, I can't justify Josh Johnson having 30 jobs over the last decade. I can't justify what you're talking about with Josh McCown. I understand that. But I do get why RG3, especially now that he's a year removed from football. I mean, there's the play. Like, I don't know what you're doing on this play. And then he stays in for the 4th and 3, and then he shows
that play
how
doesn't make you ineligible to play. No. And even some of the things you said about him, the reason why RG3 wasn't embraced in the locker room because he's a little bit different. His personality's a little bit different, but he's not a bad guy. He's a family guy. Now, his thoughts and everything might differ from some other guys in that locker room, but, man, you need to have some different thoughts from guys in that locker room. I know guys in that locker room, and a bunch of them are different. But we accept their differences, but sometimes we have a quarterback that he's a little bit different. We don't want to accept that. We accept all these other guys, they got major differences. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't have in common. But sometimes as the quarterback, we put too many eyeballs on them, and we just make too many excuses of why they shouldn't be there. They're just like anyone else on the team. If a guy's a backup defensive tackle, so what? He's a little bit weird. We accept him. But as a quarterback, I don't know why we do that to quarterbacks.
But isn't it a little bit more of an issue, just the fact that he tends to get hurt very, very often, and they're big injuries that keep him out for extended periods of time?
Okay, you telling me there's 100 quarterbacks in the league better than RG3?
No,
I don't.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
These other guys haven't played. All right?
Correct.
I mean, part of playing the game is guys are going to get hurt. But that doesn't eliminate you from being on a team.
The injury stuff is why, in my eyes, why he's not in a discussion for being a starter on a bad team. But the reason why for this particular team, I don't love the signing. I'm not saying RG3 doesn't deserve to be on a roster in the NFL. What I am saying is I think Baltimore needs to be preparing for life post-Joe Flacco. And this seems like it's an emergency quarterback to win a couple games if something happens to Flacco.
Do you think he could still play?
I mean, I don't think if he were the starter for my team, I would feel terribly about it because I don't think he can stay healthy. But Chris's point, and it's the point I bring up with Cap all the time, I think Cap's good enough to be a starter in this league. But even if he's not, you cannot convince me there's 90 guys better than him. I understand why you can't say there's 90 guys better than RG3. I think for this team in particular, I don't understand the fit. I don't understand him as a backup for a quarterback that seems to be closer to the end than to the beginning.
I believe they're going to draft a quarterback that would be the replacement for Flacco compared to going in free agency. Right now, you need arms to be able to throw. You need a guy that's been in the league, that has an understanding of the league. And we give all these other quarterbacks plenty of years to, just sit on the bench and come watch film, and they're going to get better. But RG3, he's not afforded that opportunity. And I believe that he's talented enough, all right? That's why you're coaching. You coach the kids to teach them how to play. That's what pro football is about. These guys aren't finished products. They got a bunch of bums that are quarterbacks. Don't nobody say nothing about them. You know the reason why they haven't gotten hurt? Because they can't play, and they haven't gotten in the game.
So let me ask you a question real quick, because we never talked about it, because it just wasn't a big topic. So were you bothered last year that he was out, that no one would give him a shot?
No, I wasn't bothered because I probably thought it was football related. It wasn't anything else off the field. I know Baltimore was one of the destinations that Kaepernick could have ended up. So no, it wouldn't have nothing to do with that.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.